Πανεπιστημίου Κύπρου, κύριοι καθηγητές και διδάσκοντες του Πανεπιστημίου μας, αγαπητοί φοιτητές και φοιτήτριες, εκλεκτοί προσκεκλημένοι κυρίες και κύριοι. Το Ανοιχτό Πανεπιστήμιο Κύπρου σας καλωσορίζει στην πρώτη ημερίδα τηλεκπαίδευσης που διοργανώνει με θέμα την αξιοποίηση διαδικτυακών εργαλείων ανοικτού κώδικα στην εκπαίδευση. Ανάμεσα στους εκλεκτούς προσκεκλημένους που αποδέχθηκαν την πρόσκληση του Πανεπιστημίου μας για να μιλήσουν, συγκαταλέγεται ο εμπνευστής και δημιουργός της πλατφόρμας τηλεκπαίδευσης ανοικτού κώδικα Moodle, Κύριος Μάρτιν του μας, τον οποίο και ευχαριστούμε θερμά για τη συμμετοχή του. Ακόμη θα θέλαμε να εκφράσουμε τις θερμές μας ευχαριστίες και στον έντιμο Υπουργό Παιδείας και Πολιτισμού, κύριο Ανδρέα Δημητρίου, ο οποίος έθεσε υπό την αιγίδα του τη σημερινή μας ημερίδα. Παρακαλώ το Διευθυντή Διοίκησης και Οικονομικών του Ανοιχτού Πανεπιστημίου Κύπρου, κύριο Χριστόφορο Χριστοδουλίδη, όπως προσέλθει στο βήμα για να απευθύνει χαιρετισμό.
Καλημέρα σας. Έντιμε κύριε Υπουργέ Παιδείας και Πολιτισμού, αξιότιμε κύριε Πρόεδρε της δικού σας του Ανοιχτού Πανεπιστημίου, ακαδημαϊκό και διοικητικό προσωπικό του Ανοιχτού Πανεπιστημίου Κύπρου, εκλεκτοί προσκεκλημένοι, φίλες και φίλοι. Θα ήθελα και εγώ με τη σειρά μου να σας καλωσορίσω στη σημερινή ημερίδα που διοργανώνει το Ανοιχτό Πανεπιστήμιο με θέμα την ηλεκτρονική μάθηση. Έχουμε μαζί μας σήμερα μια αρκετά καλή ομάδα από επιστήμονες οι οποίοι έχουν αφιερώσει πολλά χρόνια στο θέμα της ανοιχτής και εξαποστάσεως εκπαίδευσης. Είμαστε ιδιαίτερα ευτυχείς που έχουμε μαζί μας σήμερα τον κύριο Μάρτιν του μας, εμπνευστή και δημιουργό της πλατφόρμας τηλεκπαίδευσης ανοιχτού κώδικα Moodle, η οποία χρησιμοποιείται σε περισσότερο από 49.000 εκπαιδευτικά ιδρύματα από περίπου 36 εκατομμύρια φοιτητές σε 210 χώρες. Martin, on behalf of the Open University of Cyprus, I would like to personally welcome you to Cyprus and thanking you for being part of this conference. You're welcome. Επίσης, έχουμε μαζί μας τον καθηγητή Paul Clark, στέλεχος του Ανοιχτού Πανεπιστημίου του Ηνωμένου Βασιλείου από το 1971, όπου διατέλεσε λέκτορα φυσικής και επίσης διατέλεσε Pro-Vice Chancellor από το 2002 μέχρι το 2007. Κατά την περίοδο αυτή, ο καθηγητής Paul Clark είχε την ευθύνη για διδασκαλία και μάθηση, teaching and learning, για τους περισσότερο από 250.000 φοιτητές του Ανοιχτού Πανεπιστημίου του Ηνωμένου Βασιλείου. Professor Clark, on behalf of the Open University of Cyprus, I would also like to welcome you both to Cyprus and to the Open University, and thank you for being part of today's conference. Παρακαλώ. Το Ανοιχτό Πανεπιστήμιο Κύπρου άρχισε τη λειτουργία τον Οκτώβριο του 2006 με 2 προγράμματα και 162 φοιτητές. Από την αρχή φάνηκε ότι υπήρχαν πολλές κοινωνικές και οικονομικές προκλήσεις οι οποίες έπρεπε να αντιμετωπιστούν. Ο καινοτόμος τρόπος δράσεως και η νέα προσέγγιση με την εξαποστάσεως εκπαίδευση ήταν κάτι το άγνωστο τόσο για τον Κύπριο πολίτη, όσο και για πολλούς από τους φοιτητές μας. Ενώ το αρχικό σχέδιο δράσης προέβλεπε τη χρήση της τεχνολογίας για μάθηση, αναγκαστήκαμε στα αρχικά βήματα να οπισθοχωρήσουμε και να πάμε σε σεμινάρια, ούτως ώστε οι φοιτητές μας να μάθουν τη χρήση της τεχνολογίας. Τα ανωτέρα σεμινάρια έγιναν σε ειδικούς χώρους της Αρχής Τηλεπικοινωνιών Κύπρου, σε όλες τις πόλεις της Κύπρου και είχαν σαν σκοπό να διασφαλίσουν ότι οι φοιτητές μας κατήχαν τα απαιτούμενα εχέγγυα για να μπορούν να χρησιμοποιήσουν την τεχνολογία. Παρά τα ανωτέρα, δεν απαγοητευτήκαμε. Κατανοώντας τις ανάγκες που έπρεπε να καλύψουμε, αρχίσαμε να ψάχνουμε για εργαλεία και μεθόδους ώστε να διασφαλίσουμε την ποιότητα της ακαδημαϊκής διαδικασίας. Η πλατφόρμα τηλεκπαίδευσης Moodle άρχισε να χρησιμοποιείται επιλεκτικά κατά το ακαδημαϊκό 2007-2008 και σιγά-σιγά καθιερώθηκε ως ένα από τα κύρια εργαλεία που χρησιμοποιούμε σήμερα. Σήμερα μπορούμε να μιλούμε για περισσότερους από 2.000 φοιτητές σε 5 ενεργά προγράμματα, εκ των οποίων τα 4 έχουν ήδη παράξει αποφύτους. Μπορούμε επίσης να μιλούμε για αριθμό εργαλείων και λογισμικών, τα οποία αναπτύχθηκαν ή υλοποιήθηκαν για την υποστήριξη της ακαδημαϊκής διαδικασίας και για τα οποία θα γίνει περαιτέρω λόγος στις επόμενες παρουσιάσεις. Είμαστε ιδιαίτερα περήφανοι για τη διεκδίκηση 4 εκατομμυρίων από κοινοτικούς πόρους για την ανάπτυξη των συστημάτων και της ψηφιακής υποδομής του Πανεπιστημίου. Η υλοποίηση του ανωτέρου προγράμματος τα επόμενα 4 χρόνια θα μας επιτρέπει να εξυπηρετούμε ποιοτικά περισσότερα από 20.000 φοιτητές ανά το παγκόσμιο. Παρά τα πολλά προβλήματα, το Ανοιχτό Πανεπιστήμιο Κύπρου αναπτύσσεται με γοργό ρυθμό και έχει ήδη δώσει το στίγμα του στην κυπριακή κοινωνία. Πιστεύω ότι οι σημερινές ομιλίες θα μας διαφωτίσουν, θα μας επιμορφώσουν, αλλά παράλληλα θα μας προκαλέσουν να σκεφτούμε ποια θα είναι τα μελλοντικά μας βήματα στην εκπαίδευση σε όλα τα επίπεδα, από τη δημοτική μέχρι και την πανεπιστημιακή. Σας εύχομαι αυτή η μέρα να είναι επικοδομητική και γεμάτη γνώσης. Ευχαριστώ.
Παρακαλείται ο πρόεδρος της Διοικούσας Επιτροπής του Ανοικτού Πανεπιστημίου Κύπρου, καθηγητής Πάνος Ραζής, να προσέλθει στο βήμα για να απευθύνει χαιρετισμό.
Έντιμε κύριε Υπουργέ της Παιδείας και του Πολιτισμού, αγαπητοί κύριοι ομιλητές, αγαπητοί συνάδελφοι από τον χώρο της έρευνας και της εκπαίδευσης, κυρίες και κύριοι, εκ μέρους του Ανοικτού Πανεπιστημίου Κύπρου, σας καλωσορίζω στη σημερινή ημερίδα τηλεκπαίδευσης, την οποία οργανώνει το Ανοιχτό Πανεπιστήμιο στο πλαίσιο της αξιοποίησης διαδικτυακών εργαλείων ανοικτού κώδικα στην εκπαίδευση. On behalf of the Open University of Cyprus, I would like to welcome all of you in today's workshop, organized by the Open University, which is devoted to the implementation of web-based tools of open source in education. In particular, I would like to give a warm welcome to the founder of Moodle, the open source course management system we are using at the Open University, Mr. Martin Duyamas, and to the ex-Vice Chancellor of the Open University of the United Kingdom, Professor Paul Clark. For Mr. Duyamas, what should I say? The success of the wide utilization of the Moodle platform he conceived and founded in almost all respectable distance teaching universities says it all. This excellent management system is a very reliable, efficient, and robust system that allows higher education, as well as the other sectors of any education system, to unleash their real power, concentrate on their mission, and offer the best possible educational results for the benefit of the whole society. Yesterday, I just returned from the last conference of the European Association of Distant Teaching Universities, EADTU, where we took the decision to promote the sharing of open educational content and resources for our distant teaching universities. Without such platforms and systems like Moodle, this would not have been possible. As of Professor Clark, allow me to state that his so many years' experience with the Open University of the United Kingdom, the older in Europe, makes his expertise in advising younger open universities like ours in Cyprus a very valuable one. We will certainly benefit from the presence of both of them here today, but as I hope also for the future to come as well. These honorary guests, together with all the other expert speakers we will hear today, from all sectors of our educational system, will have the opportunity to present to us their hand-on experience on using the Moodle Open Educational Platform for distance education. Θα πρέπει να θεωρούμε πραγματικά τους εαυτούς μας πολύ τυχερούς τη σημερινή εποχή, αγαπητοί συνάδελφοι της εκπαίδευσης όλων των βαθμίδων. Μέχρι πριν από κάποια χρόνια, το διαδίκτυο με τα search engines δεν είχε ακόμα επινοηθεί, ούτε βέβαια και τα αντίστοιχα εργαλεία και οι οργανωμένες βάσεις δεδομένων για την εύκολη διάδοση του εκπαιδευτικού και άλλου υλικού στους σπουδαστές των ιδρυμάτων που υπηρετούμε, αλλά και σε όλη την κοινωνία ευρύτερα. Έτσι, το όραμα χαρισματικών ανθρώπων για μια κοινωνία των υπευθύνων πολιτών, μια κοινωνία της γνώσης, της τεκμηρίωσης, της αναλυτικής σκέψης και παράλληλα της στενής συνεργασίας ανάμεσα στους διάφορους εμπλεκόμενους στην εκπαίδευση και την έρευνα φορείς, δεν μπορούσε να εκπληρωθεί ούτε κατά τον ελάχιστο δυνατό βαθμό. Μετά μπήκε στη δουλειά και τη ζωή μας το διαδίκτυο, τα search engines, το www και όλα αυτά τα εργαλεία πρόσβασης που κάνουν τη ζωή του επιστήμονα πολύ πιο εύκολη. Η υπόσχεση όμως που δόθηκε για ανοιχτό κώδικα, πρωτίστως για την επικοινωνία μέσα από τα ισχυρά υπολογιστικά συστήματα, είτε μιλάμε για μηχανές mainframes, supercomputers, workstations, clusters από επεξεργαστές μεγάλης υπολογιστικής απόδοσης, ποτέ μέχρι σήμερα δεν είχε υλοποιηθεί. Σιγά σιγά όμως, ορμόμενοι από την ευρηματικότητα ανθρώπων που αφιέρωσαν μεγάλο χρόνο στην υπηρεσία του κοινού καλού, καθώς και την πίεση του κοινού για οικονομικές λύσεις και συμβατότητα των εφαρμογών σε όλους τους τομείς και σε όλες τις διαθέσιμες πλατφόρμες, οι λύσεις ανοιχτού κώδικα δεν άργησαν να γίνονται πραγματικότητα και να προσφέρονται ποιοτικά προς υλοποίηση. Ακόμα και οι δημοσιεύσεις που βγαίνουν σήμερα από τα μεγάλα πειράματα και επιστημονικά πεδία στον κόσμο είναι διαθέσιμες ανοιχτά στο διαδίκτυο, αρκετά προτού δημοσιευθούν επίσημα στα διάφορα επιστημονικά περιοδικά. Για το Ανοιχτό Πανεπιστήμιο Κύπρου, η αξιοποίηση λύσεων ανοιχτού κώδικα στην υπηρεσία της εκπαίδευσης είναι εκ των όνου κάνευ. Ταγμένο να υπηρετεί μια μεγάλη μάζα ενδιαφερομένων με ευρύ ηλικιακό φάσμα, στους οποίους το Ανοιχτό Πανεπιστήμιο προσφέρει μια νέα ευκαιρία για σπουδές ή αναβαθμισμένες γνώσεις για βελτίωση της παραγωγικότητας και αύξηση της ανταγωνιστικότητας των οργανισμών όπου υπηρετούν, το Ανοιχτό Πανεπιστήμιο προχωρά στην παροχή προς τους σπουδαστές του καινοτόμων λύσεων που συνάδουν με τις τελευταίες τεχνολογίες και παιδαγωγικές πρακτικές. Ο δρόμος είναι ακόμα μακρύς, τόσο για την άρτια υλοποίηση των λύσεων αυτών, όσο και στην εμπέδωσή τους στην υπηρεσία των φοιτητών και της διαβίου μάθησης για όλη την κοινωνία. Αποτελεί όμως μονόδρομο και το Ανοιχτό Πανεπιστήμιο έχει αρχίσει να διανύει την απόσταση με ολοένα και μεγαλύτερα βήματα όσο δυναμώνει. Αυτή η διαφοροποίηση άλλωστε από τα άλλα συμβατικού τύπου πανεπιστήμια αποτελεί και το όχημα που θα συμβάλλει τα μέγιστα στην υλοποίηση των στόχων του Ιδρύματος και της διαφορετικής στοχοθεσίας του. Η πλατφόρμα τηλεκπαίδευσης ανοιχτού κώδικα Moodle αποτελεί μια αξιόπιστη και πολύ καλά ανεπτυγμένη τεχνολογία, η οποία έχει διαδοθεί πολύ γρήγορα σε όλα σχεδόν τα εξαποστάσεως ιδρύματα ανώτατης εκπαίδευσης. Τις δυνατότητες της πλατφόρμας αυτής, τα πλεονεκτήματά της και τις εφαρμογές της στις σύγχρονες εκπαιδευτικές μεθοδολογίες που εξυπηρετούν τις ανάγκες της εξαποστάσεως εκπαίδευσης, θα έχετε την ευκαιρία να ακούσετε σήμερα από πρώτο χέρι από τους συναδέλφους που την έχουν υιοθετήσει στα διάφορα στάδια της εκπαίδευσης και από τον εμπνευστή και ιδρυτή της, κύριο Μάρτιν Τουγιάμας, τον οποίον έχουμε σήμερα μαζί μας. Με την ευκαιρία αυτή θα ήθελα να χαιρετήσω την παρουσία στη σημαντική αυτή ημερίδα του Υπουργού Παιδείας και Πολιτισμού, η οποία υποδηλώνει, πιστεύω, το μεγάλο και έμπρακτο του ενδιαφέρον για πρακτικές και καινοτόμες λύσεις στο πλαίσιο της προσφοράς ποιοτικής εκπαίδευσης στον τόπο μας. Θα ακολουθήσει ο χαιρετισμός από τον έντιμο Υπουργό Παιδείας και Πολιτισμού, ο οποίος και θα καλείται να ανοίξει τις εργασίες της ενδιαφέρουσας αυτής της ημερίδας. Ευχαριστώ πολύ.
Κύριε Πρόεδρε της προσωρινής Διοικούσας Επιτροπής του Ανοιχτού Πανεπιστημίου, dear Professor Clark, dear Dr. Douyamas, welcome to Cyprus. Αγαπητοί συνάδελφοι του Ανοιχτού Πανεπιστημίου, επιμένω να χαιρετίζω τους εκπαιδευτικούς σαν συναδέλφους εκπαιδευτικούς, επομένως αγαπητές και αγαπητοί συνάδελφοι εκπαιδευτικοί. Έχω έναν λόγο τον οποίο δεν θα διαβάσω. Θα κάνω κάποια ευρύτερα σχόλια ως προς τις ραγδαίες εξελίξεις που συμβαίνουν στη διάδοση της μάθησης και τη διαχείριση της ανθρώπινης σκέψης από τη σύγχρονη τεχνολογία. Και θα αρχίσω με κάτι το οποίο ζω καθημερινά. Έχουμε στο σπίτι ένα μικρό το οποίο είναι 20 μηνών. Δεν είναι ο γιος μου, είναι ο εγγονός μου. Έχει μία σειρά από καινούρια παιχνίδια, τα οποία στην πραγματικότητα για εκείνον που ξέρει τι κάνει η εξελικτική ψυχολογία της νηπιακής ηλικίας, μεταφέρουν τις ανακαλύψεις του ψυχολογικού εργαστηρίου των τελευταίων 10 περίπου χρόνων στη βιομηχανία των παιχνιδιών. Έχει έναν εικονικό υπολογιστή που είναι παιχνίδι. Έχει ένα σωρό κουμπιά που τα χειρίζεται για να ανακαλύψει τους ήχους τους οποίους παράγουν, τους αριθμούς τους οποίους παρουσιάζουν, εναλλαγή χρωμάτων και ούτω καθεξής. Μέσα σε 2-3 μήνες σταμάτησε να ασχολείται με αυτά. Τώρα ασχολείται με τα διάφορα τηλέφωνα που υπάρχουν στο σπίτι, κάνει κλήσεις όταν δεν τον παρακολουθούμε, ακούμε φωνές να απαντούν στο τηλέφωνο και εκείνο το οποίο τον τρελαίνει στην κυριολεξία τις τελευταίες 2 εβδομάδες είναι το iPad. Μπορεί να κάνει slide για να το ανοίξει και ήδη έχει μάθει ότι κάνοντας scroll την οθόνη μπορεί να βρει που είναι το πιάνο, το εικονίδιο για το πιάνο, ανοίγει το εικονίδιο για το πιάνο και αρχίζει να παίζει. Είναι 20 μηνών. Δεν έχει τίποτα λιγότερο ή τίποτα περισσότερο από ένα ομαλό παιδί, υγιές παιδί αυτής της ηλικίας. Φανταστείτε την ευκαιρίες μάθησης που είχαμε στις δικές μας τις ηλικίες και συγκρίνεται με αυτές. Στην πραγματικότητα, η επανάσταση που συμβαίνει σήμερα, και θα έρθω στα του ανοικτού, η επανάσταση που συμβαίνει σήμερα ουσιαστικά διασταυρώνεται, είναι διασταύρωση 2 ρευμάτων. Αφενός, αποκτούμε μια καλή κατανόηση του τρόπου με τον οποίο ο ανθρώπινος νους δουλεύει στις διάφορες ηλικίες και αποκτούμε τεχνολογία που μπορούμε να διαπεράσουμε τις βασικές λειτουργίες μάθησης από πάρα πολύ νωρίς. Δεν λέω με αυτό ότι έχουμε μάθει τα πάντα, στην πραγματικότητα βρισκόμαστε μόλις στην αρχή, αλλά διαβλέπω ότι η σχολική τάξη θα αλλάξει δραματικά μέσα στα προσεχή 5-10 χρόνια. Δεν θα πρέπει να μιλάμε για δεκαετίες πια. Και σίγουρα η τάξη δεν θα περικλείεται μέσα σε 4 τοίχους. Η τάξη μπορεί να είναι όλη φίλιος και όπως είπε προηγουμένως ο πρόεδρος της διοικούσας, μπορεί σε αυτή την δυνάμει τάξη, τη virtual τάξη, να καλείς ομιλητές και πληροφορίες από όλο τον κόσμο. Από τα καλύτερα εργαστήρια του κόσμου, από τα καλύτερα πανεπιστήμια του κόσμου και ούτω καθεξής. Αυτό το τοπίο θέτει πολύ μεγάλο βάρος σε αυτούς οι οποίοι σχεδιάζουν την εκπαίδευση, όπως είναι οι επιτελείς ενός Υπουργείου Παιδείας ή ο ίδιος ο Υπουργός Παιδείας, αλλά ακόμα μεγαλύτερο βάρος θέτει στους εκπαιδευτικούς. Διότι από μεταφορείς πληροφορίες ή αναμεταδότες πληροφορίες θα πρέπει να γίνουν συστηματική επιτελής διαχείρισης της πληροφορίας. Αν συγκρίνουμε λοιπόν το τι κάνει ο γιατρός, ένας σύγχρονος γιατρός ή ένας σύγχρονος χειρούργος, και αν μπούμε σε ένα σύγχρονο χειρουργείο, θα διαπιστώσουμε ότι ελάχιστη σχέση έχει με το χειρουργείο πριν από 10, 20, 30 χρόνια ή πολύ περισσότερο των αρχών του αιώνα. Πολλές τάξεις σήμερα, ακόμα και στην Κύπρο, δεν διαφέρουν πολύ από τις τάξεις που είχαμε στις αρχές του αιώνα. Και πολλά πράγματα τα οποία κάνουν οι εκπαιδευτικοί στην Κύπρο σήμερα δεν διαφέρουν πολύ από αυτά που κάναν πριν από 20, 30, 40 ή και 100 χρόνια. Βρισκόμαστε λοιπόν σε μια περίοδο όπου όλοι μας θα πρέπει να αλλάξουμε. Ο δάσκαλος κάθε επίπεδου, από την προδημοτική, από την νηπιακή, από την βρεφική ηλικία, και είναι ένα άλλο θέμα να συζητήσουμε ότι ουσιαστικά δεν υπάρχει δομημένη εκπαίδευση πριν από τα 4 χρόνια και πρέπει να αρχίσουμε να την έχουμε από την αρχή. Λοιπόν, ο δάσκαλος της κάθε ηλικίας θα πρέπει να εκπαιδευτεί και να αναπτυχθεί ως ένας επιτελάρχης διαχείρισης της γνώσης και παραγωγής νέων τρόπων διαχείρισης της γνώσης στο μυαλό του μαθητή του. Προφανώς η ανοιχτή, η εξαποστάσεως εκπαίδευση, σαν αυτήν την οποία προσφέρει το ανοιχτό πανεπιστήμιο, είναι πορεία προς την οποία θα βαδίσουμε όλοι, αλλά επίσης τα ίδια τα κλασικά πανεπιστήμια θα γίνονται όλο και περισσότερο ιδρύματα διαχείρισης εξ αποστάσεως της μάθησης και της γνώσης και τα ίδια τα σχολεία. Γνωρίζετε ότι έχουμε το πρόγραμμα Δίας, βλέπω στο πρόγραμμα ότι ο Ανδρέας Ελευθερίου θα μιλήσει για το πρόγραμμα Δίας που έχουμε στο Υπουργείο Παιδείας. Αυτό είναι ένα πρόγραμμα το οποίο έχει σαν σκοπό να μεταφέρει γνώση και λύση προβλημάτων και δεξιότητες ανάλυσης στην ψηφιακή τεχνολογία. Όχι ως Υπουργός, ως εμπειρογνώμονας για αυτά τα πράγματα θα έλεγα ότι είναι ήδη πολύ πίσω, παρά το γεγονός ότι άρχισε πριν από 3-4 χρόνια, γιατί άρχισε πάνω στη λογική ενός παλιού αναλυτικού προγράμματος και πάνω σε μια στατική αντίληψη της χρήσης της ψηφιακής τεχνολογίας. Παρά τα αυτά είναι ένα βήμα το οποίο μας δίνει τη δυνατότητα να προχωρήσουμε γρήγορα στον εξυγχρονισμό και του Δία. Έχω εξαγγείλει και ήδη είμαστε στην τελειωτική φάση της δοκιμασίας ενός πιλωτικού προγράμματος, όπου μία τάξη του Λυκείου θα αφήσει στην άκρη τα βιβλία και θα δουλέψει με ηλεκτρονικά βιβλία τα οποία ετοιμάζουμε αυτή τη στιγμή. Το πείραμα θα πάει στην τάξη σε 3 μήνες. Αυτή τη στιγμή ετοιμάζεται. Θα αφήσει στην άκρη τα βιβλία, θα μετατρέψουμε τα βιβλία σε ηλεκτρονικά βιβλία, θα βάλουμε ό,τι σχετικό έχουμε για τα μαθήματα από το πρόγραμμα Δίας και ταυτόχρονα αναπτύσσουμε κάποια άλλα πράγματα τα οποία θα μπορούσαν να συνδέσουν με την πλατφόρμα αυτή ή άλλες παρόμοιες, ώστε να πάμε σε μια παγκόσμια δυνητική τάξη για αυτή τη σχολική τάξη. Θα χρησιμοποιήσουμε ένα καινούριο μηχάνημα, το οποίο μοιάζει με το iPad, δεν είναι το iPad, έχει τις ίδιες δυνατότητες με το iPad και επιπλέον είναι συμβατό με τα Windows και κατά συνέπεια μπορεί να τρέξει προγράμματα στο λογισμικό των Windows. Θέλω λοιπόν να συγχαρώ το Ανοιχτό Πανεπιστήμιο για αυτά που κάνει, να δηλώσω ότι θα ήθελαμε και μιλώ τώρα σαν κυβέρνηση, σαν Υπουργός Παιδείας, θα θέλαμε να δούμε το Ανοιχτό Πανεπιστήμιο να λειτουργεί ως ένας συλλογικός επιτελάρχης, ως ένα συλλογικό επιτελείο εξυγχρονισμού όλης της εκπαίδευσης μας και όχι μόνο της πανεπιστημιακής, και αυτό στην πραγματικότητα είναι που τους καλώ να κάνουν. Αφενός. Αφετέρου, θα ήθελα να κάνω ένα γενικότερο πολιτικό σχόλιο. Το γενικότερο πολιτικό σχόλιο είναι το εξής. Όπως αντιλαμβάνεστε, αυτή η πλατφόρμα και αυτή η ανοιχτή εξ αποστάσεως εκπαίδευση προϋποθέτει μια κοινωνία ανοιχτή. Προϋποθέτει μια κοινωνία η οποία δεν φοβάται κανενός είδους πληροφορία και κανενός είδους ανάλυση. Γιατί έτσι κι αλλιώς δεν μπορεί να την ελέγξει. Θα πρέπει λοιπόν η κοινωνία μας, που έχει τις φοβίες της, έχει τις ανασφάλειες της, πολλές φορές εξαιτίας των προβλημάτων της, έμαθε στο ένα ή στο άλλο επίπεδο να λειτουργεί κρυμμένα, να μην χρησιμοποιήσω άλλη λέξη, να αποδεχτεί αυτό το άνοιγμα της σύγχρονης κοινωνίας, να αποδεχτεί αυτές τις μεγάλες δυνατότητες που προσφέρει η ανοιχτή πληροφόρηση, ο ανοιχτός προβληματισμός και η διασταύρωση και η σύγκρουση ιδεών, και όταν το αποδεχτεί θα έχουμε κάνει ένα μεγάλο βήμα μπροστά, που ενδεχομένως από αυτό το βήμα, όταν το έχουμε κάνει, όταν γυρνάμε πίσω, θα βλέπουμε τα προβλήματα που δημιουργήσαμε στην πορεία μας και θα λέμε «Μα πώς ήταν δυνατόν να τα έχουμε δημιουργήσει». Μπορούμε να τα λύσουμε όμως. Ευχαριστώ πολύ.
Στο πρώτο μέρος της ημερίδας φιλοξενούμε 4 έγκριτους ομιλητές από την Κύπρο. Τον κύριο Στάθη Μαυροθέρη, προϊστάμενο της Υπηρεσίας Πληροφορικής και Τεχνολογίας του Ανοικτού Πανεπιστημίου Κύπρου. Τον κύριο Μιχάλη Μάγο, εκ μέρους της κυρίας Αναστασίας Οικονόμου, λειτουργό του Παιδαγωγικού Ινστιτούτου Κύπρου. Τον αναπληρωτή καθηγητή Παναγιώτη Ζαφύρη, του Τμήματος Πολυμέσων και Γραφικών Τεχνών του Τεχνολογικού Πανεπιστημίου Κύπρου. Και τους κύριους Παναγιώτη Θεοδόρου και Παναγιώτη Πέτρου, εκ μέρους του κύριου Ανδρέα Ελευθερίου, λειτουργούς του άξονα διαχείρισης μάθησης Δίας. Τη συζήτηση που ακολουθεί συντονίζει ο καθηγητής του Ανοικτού Πανεπιστημίου Κύπρου, Θανάσης Χατζηλάκος, και παρακαλώ πως οι ομιλητές και ο συντονιστής λάβουν τις θέσεις τους.
Good morning. My name is Stathis Mavrotheris. I'm the head of the Information and Communication Technologies Department of the Open University of Cyprus. Today I will be presenting to you the e-learning tools and services that we are using at the Open University of Cyprus. I will start with a brief look at the OUC profile, and in that context, I will refer to our ICT infrastructure foundations, which are essential for providing the e-learning services. Then I will deal with the topic of my presentation, e-learning tools and services, and I will conclude with some lessons that we have learned so far. As you probably know, OUC currently offers 4 graduate programs and 1 undergraduate programs of study. In parallel, it is preparing another 4 graduate programs and a number of independent modules. One unique characteristic of our university is the student distribution. We have students in many countries, mainly in Cyprus and Greece. Students are organized in groups, and currently I can say that we have 122 student groups distributed in 4 cities, as you can see here. Our vision is, of course, to become a center of excellence in the provision of educational services via e-learning. And we, in the IT department, are supporting directly this vision via a number of actions. We are engaging actively in emerging technology monitoring and assessment. We are developing the ICT infrastructure of the university. We're engaging in effective technology transfer and in the provision of rich training and support services to the whole university community. It is interesting to see a few years back how we started and where we are today. Just 4 years ago, short 4 years, in 2006, we had very humble beginnings at the Open University. At the time, there was no IT infrastructure. There was practically no personnel, no office space, no budget. The OUC teaching and learning in 2006 was carried out via email, and even that was hosted at an external provider because there was no capacity to run it internally. In 2010, today, as we speak now, things are drastically different. We have a highly talented ICT team at the university that is working constantly on developing the most sophisticated ICT strategic plans. We are already designing and implementing robust systems architectures. We are designing and implementing advanced infrastructures. And these changes have allowed us to develop an integrated e-learning environment to provide value-added services and to provide rich user support services. In the next couple of slides, I will give you an idea about what I mean when I say strategic planning, sophisticated technologies, etc. This is a picture of our strategic planning for our network infrastructure. On the left-hand side of this slide, you see what we have today. It's already a very sophisticated broadband network infrastructure that we have today. But we are not happy with that. We are designing for one of the most advanced network infrastructures in Cyprus, and that will be completed. It will be implemented in the next 3 to 4 years, as you can see on the right. It will be distributed, it will be symmetric, it will provide business continuity in any catastrophic scenario. In parallel, we are designing and implementing an advanced server storage backup architecture. We have already designed and implemented blade server architecture. We have implemented virtualization services. We have implemented storage area networks, and we have implemented tape backup systems with robotics. Those of us in the IT domain will recognize very quickly all the benefits that are listed on the right here. And they will also know very well that those benefits are actually growing bigger as the organization grows bigger, because economies of scale will be realized. Of course, we are not building infrastructures just for their own sake. At the end of the day, we have to provide value-added services. And we have started providing to the user community, to our university community, a number of value-added services. This picture here shows a high-level concept design for our communication and collaboration suite that was implemented and delivered earlier this year. In addition to this, a number of other services, remarkable services, have been delivered, but I will talk about those in another occasion. Our work in this domain, in the ICT department, has been recognized. As mentioned earlier, about a year ago, we submitted a proposal for funding to the European Regional Development Fund in the context of a call for implementing e-university, electronic university. We submitted our proposal, and we were successful in obtaining a grant of €4 million for implementing a number of services that will transform the university to an electronic university. What you see here in this diagram is the set of services that we will implement in the next 4 years. These are the actual services that we will provide. These services will be running on the infrastructures that I described a few minutes earlier. And this concludes my introduction. I will now talk about the e-learning tools and services that we provide. Of course, there's not much to say here. E-learning tools and services are the OUC core competencies, and they rank very high. But what do we mean with e-learning? We mean a lot of things. It has a lot of aspects. When we talk about e-learning, we may be referring to a number of different concepts. We may be referring to pedagogical frameworks. At the Open University of Cyprus, as you may know, we have adapted a blended learning model for teaching and learning. Beyond frameworks, we have integrated, of course, a virtual learning environment, an integrated e-learning environment, which we call the e-class platform, that is built around Moodle. We have provided asynchronous and synchronous communication and collaboration tools. We have provided the capability to develop rich content, video services. We have provided the capability to support teaching and learning aids as they emerge. And we are currently experimenting with virtual laboratories, providing the capability to our faculty and to our students to access online laboratories and to do research, either as part of their study or as part of their research programs. We have provided online access to multiple international digital libraries, but we were not satisfied with that. We have implemented a federated DBMS search capability so that the user can search multiple databases at the same time very quickly. And the time savings that he gains can be given to his actual study and work instead of the search itself. At all times, we have placed a very big emphasis on user training and support services. We have implemented anywhere, anytime model. That is, we can provide support services to all of our users, the students, the academic staff, the management staff, the administration staff. We can provide these support services on site, at our offices, at their offices, virtually. A user can call us on the phone, can send us an email, can see us on his computer screen. We can communicate via video. We can communicate via VoIP, voice over IP. And all this communication is for free. It happens over the internet. So it doesn't matter where our students, our users are. To implement this environment, we have used a number of tools. We have used both open source and commercial tools. It is our view that these types of tools can coexist. On the left-hand side, you can see a number of tools that we are using today. The entries in bold refer to commercial tools. The rest are open source. We can use them together, and we're very happy with this model. In actuality, we believe in this model, and we're ready to invest even more in this model. So we see our future toolbox containing a lot more capabilities, but we cannot decide at this very moment which is going to be what. We are going to engage in emerging technology assessment, as I mentioned earlier, using very formal methodologies for that assessment in order to arrive at our final selection of the tools in each case. Okay, let us see more specifically what kinds of activities we can do with the asynchronous communications tools that we have. Let's think about a traditional university. You have students, you have professors, students go to classes, attend courses. In our case, you can do all of those things, and you can do them virtually. A student can log into the environment, can see the course calendar, the course syllabus, can get his homework assignments, study materials. He can submit his homeworks to the platform. Professors can watch the progress of their students, can submit feedback back to their students for their work. They can submit grades back to their students. Students and teachers, teachers and teachers can engage in online discussions via forums or via synchronous communications tools, as I will mention in a minute. Professors can also use some of these tools as part of their learning experience. And beyond this, of course, we have implemented a number of support services, such as student information services, that enable students to submit online applications, their registrations, their payments, etc. In parallel with the asynchronous tools, we have a number of synchronous communications tools. Here again, you can think of a case where a professor gives a live lecture over the internet. The professor can be giving this lecture from his office, from his home, while he is on a trip. He can give his lecture in an actual physical classroom with some of his students right there with him and some of his students being remotely present. Students can give presentations to their fellow students or to the professor over this environment. This environment enables us to broadcast public events, to organize web-based seminars or webinars, as also known. This environment has enabled us to implement the capability of virtual meetings that can be scheduled or can be ad hoc between academics, between students, between academic students, without any cost. It is interesting then to see again the growth of the university, this time in numbers, student numbers, and the introduction of technology. This graph shows where we are today, where we started and where we were today. Back in 2006, we had 160 students. Today, we have over 2,200 students. If we look at the technology introduction points, it is interesting to see that there is a continuity. 2006, no resources, we had operated only with email. Next year, we introduced Moodle. Next year, we introduced synchronous communication using a tool called Illuminate, a commercial tool. This year, we are introducing a number of tools. I'm just mentioning the tool Ephorus here for plagiarism detection. I'm sure our students will love this. Our e-class platform is built on Moodle. There is not much to say about Moodle. Sorry, Martin. Numbers speak for themselves. But if you do insist and you have more questions about Moodle, please to ask Moodler himself in a few minutes. I'm not qualified to talk about that in your presence. At this point, I would like to also take the opportunity to thank Martin for giving us this wonderful tool, for giving this tool to the whole educational community for free. Okay, I'd like to change tone a little bit and talk about something else. In addition to the actual learning environment itself, we have also taken care to build supporting services. For example, we have invested heavily in our library. A university cannot function with a library, without a library. In our case, the library has a different form. It has a small part that is a traditional library, and it has a very large part that is comprised of digital resources. You can see in this set of graphs the growth of the library collections. Taken together, our investment in digital resources is much higher than our investment in printed materials. And that is, of course, obvious why it's happening. All of our students have access to these resources online, and they can do that very easily and very quickly. We are not satisfied with that. We built support services to help our students utilize their library resources, even in an easier way. We implemented the so-called library educational gateway that uses actually the e-learning tools with which our students are already familiar to show them how to use and utilize the digital libraries that are offered to them online. So, in closing, what have we learned? I can't say that we have learned a lot. It's only 3 years that we are doing this at the Open University, but we have learned some things, or we have validated what we have been reading about this experience of offering distance learning via e-learning. How do you measure if you are successful in technology introduction? Well, there are a number of factors that hold true. You need to have executive management support. You need to engage very early on with the management of expectations. You need to involve your key users from the beginning. You need to get their requirements, but also you need to validate their requirements often, because sometimes there is a miscommunication, misconception what is the actual requirement and what you are implementing. You need to pilot a new technology. Show them, show your users what you are actually implementing. Involve them. Tailor the solutions to their needs. And certainly, implement effective ongoing support services. This is not simple. Conflicts will come up all the time. You need to be on top of that too. You need to engage in timely conflict resolution as well. How do you measure success? Well, we measure success by measuring the adoption of new services in the programs. We measure the degree of adoption per program of study. We need to also measure the speed of adoption and whether you observe any further innovations within the programs once they are introduced. We are also measuring user satisfaction using formal and informal instruments, and of course, benchmarking with peer institutions. So, my last slide. What are the lessons? Lessons are very simple. Advanced technologies and tools are not the answer. They are not enough. There are no silver bullets, I'm sorry. Answers are functions of tools and content and delivery methods and pedagogical frameworks and the quality of user training and of support services that you provide. They are a function of people. So you need to be aware of all of this. And you need to be very active and very close in what your user actually wants and what you are implementing. Thank you very much on behalf of my team, the ICLA support, and the help desk.
Good morning. My name is Michalis Magos, and I work to the Educational Department, Educational Technology Department of Cyprus Pedagogical Institute. Anastasia Economou asked me to make the presentation for her because she is attending another seminar today. So I am going to present how we support teachers using online learning environments. My presentation consists of 3 parts. Firstly, I am going to describe the ways in which we see e-learning. Then I will present the Cyprus Pedagogical Institute online learning environments. And finally, I will point out the various ways of our support to teachers. We see e-learning in 3 ways. We provide online learning opportunities for the professional development of teachers by operating a portal with educational material, including learning tools, educational scenarios, and other resources. We use social networking for discussion forums and communities of practice. We also organize online synchronous meetings and trainings. We support a learning management system based on Moodle, and for the publicity, we have the central website of Pedagogical Institute with announcements and other useful information. To be more specific, we designed, developed, and support these environments. The first one is the portal e-Epimorphosis, a portal that every teacher can have access. I am going to show this portal in a moment. The second one, Moodle, is a platform to be used by our groups of teachers who participate in specific programs. The third one is for online learning and training, and we use Illuminate for online meetings. Let's now see the real portal, not the screenshots. This is the portal e-Epimorphosis. It is targeted to teachers students and parents. But the focus is on teachers. It contains educational scenarios made by groups or individual teachers, and also contains learning tools. and a forum. Everybody can download, but someone needs to log in to upload educational scenarios, to give feedback, or to use the forum. Teachers of primary and secondary education can sign up for an account for this purpose. This is an automated process. Let me now log in to have full access to this site. We have a menu here for teachers with educational scenarios, e-material, and everybody can download educational scenarios. They can make some selections or put some keywords, let's say mathematics. And here we find the results. We can see the description of educational scenario, title, some keywords that people put in, and here we download the files. Most of them are compressed in a zip or RAR format because they contain many files. They may contain the lesson plan, some handouts. As I said before, it's a complete educational scenario. Anyone logged in can write a review for this educational scenario. People can also upload material by passing through some steps. Another thing we have is learning tools. We have many learning tools on a database, and people can filter these results by subject selection or class level or license, if it is free or commercial. Found 47 results for mathematics. Let's see one. This is the description of educational software, the web page of that software. People can make their suggestions for using the software. They can see supplementary material, user manuals, other material. And if we don't have all the tools here, teachers can suggest a new learning tool by completing this form. So that tool is included in our catalog. Our site can also contain information about programs. So here we have information about one program. And now Moodle. This is the working area for our groups. We have school-based trainers with pre-made accounts, and they can navigate the site or prepare their own classes. Here is the Moodle platform. I'm going to a class made for school-based trainers. Here we have a page, let's say a class, for our school-based trainers, and they can find information here. We have forums so that they can ask some questions. Let's see some. And they can find an answer from another person in this group. They can submit their works. By uploading a file. The teacher can see all the work submitted. We have the open class. Teachers can make their own class to use with their students. Let's see one. These are some classes. And this is a class of one teacher for use with his students. Moreover, we have a link here for Illuminate platform, so they can use online meetings. And we have an online meeting next week with our school-based trainers. Additionally, there is the online learning platform, which contains step-by-step training for specific subjects, for example, troubleshooting or software manipulation. No matter how many tools we have, the most important thing is to use them. There are project managers for each platform to administrate and handle technical issues. We created a structure in the Department of Educational Technology where we have a group of facilitators who support school-based trainers, who support the broader base of teachers. The facilitators offer online support via the online environments we have just seen, with online meetings and supportive material. Additionally to the online support, the facilitators offer face-to-face support, making school visits or monthly trainings and workshops. Thank you.
Έγινε μια μικρή αλλαγή. Τώρα θα παρουσιάσω εγώ, ο Παναγιώτης Ζαφύρης, που το Τεχνολογικό Πανεπιστήμιο. So my name is Panagiotis Zafiris. I'm an associate professor at the Department of Multimedia and Graphic Arts of the Cyprus University of Technology, the BAC. The topic of my presentation is participatory design of an online course, and I'm going to show a case study where we use participatory design to design a Learn Greek online course. The key point of my presentation is a demonstration of how a methodological approach to design can lead to a course that is both self-taught, but also self-sustained and managed. The course I will be showing is an example of a course where it was fully developed by the students, is fully taught on their own by the students, and is fully maintained by the students. I know this is a controversial topic when you are talking in front of 400 teachers and school academics, but I think it's an interesting experiment nevertheless to see whether we can actually maintain and sustain online content, learning content without the continuous monitoring of a teacher. The course comes out of an organization that a lot of you might be familiar with, Kyprosnet. Kyprosnet was founded in 1996. It was the first ever presence of Cyprus on the internet, and it was composed mainly by volunteers, or fully by volunteers, but mainly academics and PhD students studying in the States and in UK. The purpose of Kyprosnet was to utilize the internet, and particularly the World Wide Web at that time, 1996, as a system for the promotion of the word of Cyprus. This is the website of Kyprosnet. A lot of you may have seen it. And as part of Kyprosnet, we have been maintaining for the last maybe 10 to 15 years an online Greek language course. Part of the strategy was to promote the word of Cyprus, through that to promote the language of Cyprus, Greek. The course, as I said, is independently taught. It's composed of 105 audio lessons, together with a lot of transcriptions, tools, dictionaries, translations, and other forms of tools, all of which have been created and maintained by the students, and currently has 150,000 registered students. To my knowledge, after talking to Martin, it seems to be still maybe the largest Moodle course online. The objectives of the course: to assist people in learning the Greek language, to develop the content through participatory design, which I will be explaining, and through distributed social constructionism as the pedagogical umbrella. This is the website, simple, usual Moodle course. That's not the focus for the presentation. It's not necessarily the actual aesthetical design of it that I'm going to present. I'm presenting the development of the course, the content. This is one of the courses. There are actually, if you see the previous page, 4, 6, 7 Greek language courses composed of the 105 lessons. And then there is a demo ancient Greek course, which is the beginning of another project. Distributed constructionism, for those that are not familiar with it, advocates that students collaboratively create learning content and learn by creating. So I learn by doing, not just discussing. The actual constructions are discussed, they are shared between the learners, and then collaboratively they are edited, finalized, and shared as a learning object. We use that pedagogical philosophy as the basis of our design approach. Coming from a design background myself, I was more interested in the design questions, research questions, than the pedagogical. Participatory design in engineering and computer science advocates that we can create any product if we actively involve users actively in the design process. Not just by listening to their views, but by having them actually design the product themselves. And it believes that through this process, you can have a more usable and better friendly product at the end. We use a 4-stage design methodology. First, building bridges with the intended users. Second, mapping the user needs and suggestions to the system. Third, developing a prototype. And finally, integrating their feedback and continues the design iterations. Building bridges with intended users. As I mentioned, GiproSnet, the host organization, was and is still, in my view, the biggest online presence of Cyprus on the internet. So we had easy access to a large pool of users that we could communicate and get their views. We identified key users that will be interested in a Learn Greek online course and will be willing to contribute time for free to develop the course. The intended users, in our view, was the people of the Greek diaspora, travelers to Cyprus and Greece and other Greek-speaking areas, people who are generally interested in learning the language or any other language. We engaged the future students into design exercises, first by giving them a few examples of the audio lessons that we were intending to use and asking them to create transcriptions of it. As a parenthesis, the audio lessons come out of the Cyprus Broadcasting Corporation RIC audio lesson for Greek for English speakers. Some of you might be familiar with it. It goes back to the 60s. So we got the audio files from RIC, we digitized them, we put them online, and then we wanted to observe how the users could use those simple audio files to create additional accompanying content to the course. Although there was a textbook, we decided not to give it to the students. Instead, we wanted to see how they would learn with just the basics. The students engage in groups. They develop their own additional supporting tools. They develop grammar rules. They develop a list of vocabulary. They develop dictionaries, translation tools. And as you can see and understand, this involves multidisciplinary knowledge. So different users with different knowledge help each other. So someone with a computer science background might develop the code for the translation, and then someone will provide the actual terminology translations. And this was done with no pay, purely voluntarily. Last step, getting their feedback and then incorporating it, again, the students will incorporate it, incorporating it into the course. We were impressed by the student involvement. Everything ran almost smoothly. 2 months after we put the audio files online, 81 of the 105 lessons were transcribed, shared, edited, finalized, and put online by them. And then in 6 months, all lessons were actually transcribed and put online. And in our view, this is an excellent example of how distributed social constructionism can be applied. Of course, the usual question is, how do you know you are successful by doing this? We have used a number of evaluation activities. We look at the server logs. We analyze discussion board postings. We run questionnaires, both pedagogical, but also questionnaires that focus primarily on interface design. And we run usability testing to see how the users actually use the course. This is a plot of the logs at that point in time. As you can see, the overall accesses are exponentially increasing. That's a positive sign. But also, I want to point to 2 issues. If I can do this, yep. The blue line here is the discussion board accesses, whereas the yellow is the notes, which is the notes that the students actually posted. As we can see, they follow a reverse. While the board postings drop, the notes increase in accesses. This is interesting because the change occurred immediately when we gave access to the students to put the notes. While they didn't have any notes online, they would go to the board, discussion board and discuss the details and try to find answers through the discussion board. As soon as we gave them access to post their own notes, the accesses to the discussion board dropped and people just went to the notes and got the content they wanted. This is the satisfaction questionnaire. From -2 to +2, all scores are 1 and above, or 0.9 and above. Concluding, as a general observation, the students created an open online community through which they collaborated and created content that was useful and to their benefit. The web-based discussion boards were the most important component in our case because it gave them a forum to discuss and collaborate. Experiences shared on the discussion board included tricks and tips on how to solve technical issues, questions about vocabulary, and even questions about tourism and travel to Cyprus and Greece. The key component in this development process, and it's as a takeaway point for this presentation, is that if you have a good pool of what we call user leaders that can actually devote time and effort to guide the course, you can actually do a lot of the development through user involvement. Thank you very much.
Καλημέρα σε όλους. Traditional education and new technologies. The picture next to me could easily represent the current situation across all sectors of education. Information and communications technology enhances learning, communication, and teaching methods. The Ministry of Education and Culture is continuing to apply the new technologies in all schools. Our presentation today is in two parts. Part one, the information part, where I will give you some general information about the DIAS project. And part two, the interesting part, where I will demonstrate the services and tools, most of the available services and tools. Now, the Ministry of Education and Culture, within its efforts for the inclusion of information and communications technology across education, is materializing the DIAS project involving the application of a learning management system. The project funding now. The project was funded by 50% by the European Structural Funds, while the rest, the 50%, was covered by national funds To give you an idea, the total cost was around 1.5 million euro. The scope. Diasis with its services, makes a virtual learning environment, and it's providing in this way a dynamic educational tool, promoting both communication and learning, and it's offering access from both school and from home, from within the class and outside of the classroom. Potential users. As this project is being applied in all over education, we consider that it is for the whole of the school community. Therefore, the schools are part of it, the students, the teachers, and the guardians. Some important features to mention now. The schools, the teachers, the parents, and their teachers are all part of an intranet, a school community. There are no school borders within this virtual learning environment. Teachers and students can have direct contact between them, they can communicate, and they can exchange information. And this can happen between teachers and students from any school. Some safety issues to mention now. It is important to say that the environment of the intranet is safe in terms of knowing who is who, while nobody can be anonymous or give false information about their identity. Participating schools. This project is being applied in secondary education and secondary technical and vocational education. We have 7 schools, 4 lyceums, and 3 technical schools. The population is around 750 teachers and 4,000 students. Some information about infrastructure and implementation. We have the data center, which is hosting all the equipment with the relevant services, and is located at the Pedagogical Institute building at Nicosia. In all 7 schools, structural cabling was deployed and active equipment was configured accordingly in order for every PC to be able to access the system. The internet connection of all 7 schools has been upgraded to 8 megabits, while dedicated classroom with 25 PC stations is available in every school. 25 PCs according to the maximum number of students that can form a class is 25. School coordinators. Every school has 2 coordinators, which they can help internally. And the teacher training, an important part. Teacher training has been carried out in all 7 schools during school hours, at the data center premises, and locally at the schools, in all 7 schools. Access to DIAS. DIAS is accessible through the educational portal at www.dias.ac.cy, and there is plenty of information for any visitor. Now, if we are authorized users, teachers, students, and parents, once they log in, they can access all the available services. And finally, available services and tools. Everything is under the educational portal. First of all, we have the school website. Every school has its own. We have My Site, which is a personal space for every user, every teacher, and every student. We have the educational platform, which is accessible by both teachers and students. We have the collaboration platform giving communication opportunities for teachers and students again. And also there is an email account available for every teacher and every student. Where are the guardians now? Well, the guardians have different rights. Their role is read-only. They can access the system to get information about their children. They can see different events planned in the school, so they can be part of the school life. And just to clarify, parents can only access information about their own children. As a whole, this environment is accessible anytime, anywhere, by anyone, once they are authorized users. Let's carry on now with demonstrating most of the available services.
Hello, I will carry on. I am the third Panayotis in a row. So I don't know if that's a coincidence or not. I will be making a small tour around the Dias environment. And there's a question why it's called Dias, because we know, everybody knows that Athena is the goddess of knowledge. The word came out of diaδικτυακών σχολείο, so we had to use Dias, and it has nothing to do with the god of thunder. So don't be afraid of it. Now, to access Dias, we need to go to the address www.dias.ac.cy. We access it through the portal. This is our portal. And to have access to the portal, if you are an authenticated user, you use the button on the top called Entrance, Isodos. For non-authenticated users, we have access to different information concerning the portal, some presentations, explanations, announcements about events and everything like that. And this can be built up according to what the Ministry of Education wants to transfer as information to the open public. Going back to the portal at the beginning, you get information about the groups that are involved in Dias and access to schools under Dias. I will visit one of the schools. This is Technical School of Lefkosia. The URL, the address, internet address is under Dias. So this is a school under the project. And to access it, to get more information about it and log in as a teacher or a student, I need to log in with my credentials. Once this is done, then you have information. Whoops. Okay, that's it. Once this is done, you have information concerning teachers. And if you are a guardian, you see guardians as well. I have logged in with an account that has opportunity to see both, just to see the view. If you're a teacher in the school, then you have the information everybody else has, but you have something more. You have your own website concerning information about teachers. The only teachers of that school can access, so they can share announcements, anything posted on it, a diary, maybe a diary of the tests happening in the school, because there is a process now. If you want to do a test in a classroom, you have to go and check that diary that nobody else has another test at the same time or the same day. So this can be done on the platform. You have a place for forums, discussions for teachers, and other links. This is a web page that is accessed and is administrated by the school. So the school can formulate it as it wants. The good thing about the situation is that if I'm a teacher working on this kind of platform and I move to another school, which happens in Cyprus, I don't need to learn another new environment, because this is the environment I will meet in other school when visiting it or when moving to it. So I will be working with the same software and the same way of thinking. So it will be the same for all the teachers in Cyprus. The same thing applies to students and the parents. If they have a child in high school and then have a child in primary school, if these schools are under the Dias project, they have the same way with the same access authentication codes to their children's accounts or the children's information through the same way. So they don't need to know two different things or two different ways. Now, for each teacher and student, we also have a My Site. That's a personal web page. This is mine, in a way you can see from the picture, which is accessible by all users on the internet, but that particular information that I am allowing people to see. So people can visit my site, my page. They can get some information about myself under the profile, but only what I give access to. Everybody will know who I am as a person and my name and my username. So I am an authenticated user, but not anonymous. So anything I post has a name underneath and responsibility of using it for educational and personal reasons on the internet. Now, I can put personal documents, which I can access only at this point, or documents available for everybody on the internet. I am the administrator of this page, so I can make a forum or a page that I can give access to particular groups. So I'm a teacher in a school. I have a project to work with another teacher from another school and 5 or 6 students from each school. I can give access to these 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people to that particular page so we can share information and work in that process, having forums, wikis, or whatever we need in that place. So I am an administrator with this kind of software, which I will know how to work with. The student will know how to work with on the same platform, and we have a common knowledge on how everything works on this. The rights I have on my site are the same rights a student has on his my site. So he can build up and process and fix it up as he wants and share the information he wants around. This gives an open way of information communication between the teachers, community, all over around Cyprus when all the schools get on the platform. Now, the next piece of tool we have is the educational platform. The educational platform is a platform built so we can exchange lessons. As a teacher, I can give lessons towards students. I can create my lessons and courses, and I can share them around. Under the workspace here, and the public reusable learning objects, there are about 650 digital educational content forms. Under this, there are about 25% of the content of school material. We can visit a couple just to see how they feel and how they work. This could be one. Just an example of making a circle. This content covers most of the subjects of Lyceum and technical education, vocational education. We can go to another one, maybe chemistry. And you can work on and on this. Going back to the educational platform, we have an email for each particular student, which accesses it through his own name and own account. Now, this is a big project. It's a very ambitious project. We've had some experiences of students being around internet and their iPhones or their whatever, having access to a lot of information that does not include their school information. This project aims to get the students involved in school through the internet and wherever they are from, either on holidays, in school, or at home. It needs a lot of work and a lot of commitment from students and teachers as well, especially teachers. Thank you very much.
Okay, we're already 5 minutes past what we had said that we would be ending, so how long do you think we should give for a discussion? 10, 15 minutes. Okay. Questions? comments, impressions? Ριάννα. Εάν προτιμάτε να κάνετε την ερώτηση στα ελληνικά, δεν υπάρχει πρόβλημα, θα τη μεταφράσω.
Okay. Η ερώτηση είναι για το Δίας. Γιατί μόνο σε 7 σχολεία να εφαρμόζεται και όχι σε περισσότερα? Πόσους χρήστες μπορεί να δεχτεί ανά πάσα στιγμή το σύστημα? Και το τρίτο ερώτημα, γιατί το Δίας και να ξοδέψουμε τόσα λεφτά και όχι το Moodle?
Okay. This question is about Dias, and it has to do with current sizing. Why at this stage we have this number of schools. And if I may also add a question, is to what is the actual usage at this moment? If there is anything else related to Dias, that you would like to add so that they will have a chance to answer more holistically. Mariana, there's a... okay.
Είναι μια πορεία που μου δημιουργήθηκε από πέρσι που ήμασταν για το Moodle. Το σχολείο που ήμουν πέρσι ήταν ήδη στο Δία. Είναι από τα σχολεία που ήταν στο πιλωτικό πρόγραμμα. Και υπάρχει και το Moodle. Δεν μπορώ να καταλάβω γιατί δεν επεκτάθηκε το Moodle και γιατί δημιουργήθηκε ένας χωριστός χώρος που κάνει περίπου την ίδια δουλειά. Okay. Γιατί να μην ενσωματωθεί όλη η ιδέα του Δία μέσα στο Moodle που είναι και ανοιχτό.
Mm-hmm. Okay, this continues the previous question and tries to see whether Moodle is an alternative to Dias, and if so, why did we choose a separate platform as opposed to the well-known open platform?
Νίκος Πασχάλη, εγώ θα ήθελα να ακούσω την αντίδραση που είχαν τα άτομα που κατασκεύασαν το e-learning content και επίσης την αντίδραση των μαθητών στη χρήση αυτής της πλατφόρμας.
Όταν λέτε το e-learning platform, ποιο εννοείτε?
Το περιεχόμενο.
Το περιεχόμενο του
η
Διας.
αντίδραση των κατασκευαστών του περιεχομένου, δηλαδή... Για το Διας μιλώ, ναι.
Okay, this continues again more about the content of Dias and how the developers and the pupils reacted to this. More questions over here?
Ναι, ήθελα να συμπληρώσω την ερώτηση για το Δία όσον αφορά τον αριθμό των χρηστών στα 7 σχολεία. Δηλαδή, πόσοι είναι εγγεγραμμένοι σαν χρήστες που έχουν password που μπορούν να μπουν είτε σαν καθηγητές είτε σαν μαθητές σήμερα, ο συνολικός αριθμός. Διότι το Δίας έχει ξεκινήσει εδώ και πάνω από 3 χρόνια. Θα ήθελα να ξέρω τον αριθμό των πραγματικών χρηστών.
Okay, so this again has to do with the number of actual users and the actual use in Dias. Let's see if we can have some answers to that, and then we will move to other issues. Please.
Okay. First of all, why 7 schools? And why lyceums? And I'll give, in general, answers to all the questions. There was a tender, first of all, 3-4 years back. The ministry was tendering for the specific project. It was decided to cover 7 schools. I do not have the answer for that. It can, though, accommodate, based on the infrastructure, all the population, all the school population including teachers, students, and their parents. Not all the infrastructure is there, the data center is there, and by adding, if we are going to add new users, then it's easy to carry on. This project was This project was a pilot program. It had begun some years ago. During these 2 years, I would say, there were some problem identifications, requests for changes. To understand, we had teachers from the 7 schools being trained at the data center premises, and they gave their feedback. Everything was written down, and we gave our proposals to our ideas, how we wanted the platform, to the company doing the implementation, and we were coming up with what you have seen. Reactions of users. I have to say, if I understood the question correctly about the e-content, the digital educational content, the teachers, first of all, were very keen to use it, and they found, at least the examples you have seen, very useful. It's not the same to say something and to show it in the way you have seen. There are even more impressive educational content. Pupils, at least those we had the chance to come across with, were again very positive. You understand that this is not something that could be implemented from one day to another and have everything being changed. It's a process. We as a team, we are pleased with the reactions. There are problems. We cannot say that everything is fine. And we are building on that, though, because from the negatives, we can correct things. Today, I mentioned earlier how many users we had. The population of the schools is 4,700. However, we are not creating an account for any user unless we have their consent. For example, if we want to take the personal data of a student, which is his name, his surname, and a personal ID, his ID, we need the consent of the guardians. We continue and creating the account, to create the account, only and only when we have this specific consent. The same applies for the guardians themselves and the teachers. Currently, we have created around 2,400 accounts, and I'm referring only to teachers and students. I'm not putting in the guardians. Want to add something?
Maybe something. There was a question about why VIAS and not Moodle in a way. It's a big question. The answer might be a bit simple. VIAS does not do only what Moodle presents. We have, inside the system, there is not only giving educational content, digital educational content towards teachers, and it's not only teaching, but it's also organizing personal work as a teacher, but also organizing the school within. Because in the structure of the school site, you have tools and structures that work for the administration of the school, and in connection with the Ministry of Education and the schools with each other. So it's a cross-platform communication system which will focus on the administration, also the personal development of a teacher, and the personal organizing stuff and things he needs for teaching. So part of it could be done by Moodle. It's not an argument, it could. But part of it is something else as well. So why the one or the other is not a technical maybe question. It's a decision or a technical administrative question answer that could be given by someone else, not by us, in a way. Or it could be, it could be a focus for
I think there can be a big discussion about this.
Good.
Let me, and this I think belongs to another event. Let me add just a small piece from my background. It is very difficult to do these things. We've been trying to do similar things in Greece as well, with not much more success. It takes very long things. I respect our minister as a scientist and as a politician, but I strongly disagree with what he said that in 5 or 10 years we will have a very different classroom. I think that it's decades or generations. And regarding to Moodle versus Dias, it's very easy when one sees the success of an open source software a few years later to say, why did I not see that 10 years ago? But remember, there are also many other things which have not been so successful. So let's go ahead and see if there are any questions regarding the other presentations, or we should move to have the break. And again, εάν προτιμάτε να μιλάμε ελληνικά στη συζήτηση, πολύ ευχαρίστως, έχουμε τρόπο να μεταφράζουμε για τους ξένους μας.
Για μας και τον καθηγητή Paul Clark, οι οποίοι μαζί με τον καθηγητή του Ανοικτού Πανεπιστημίου Κύπρου, Θανάση Χατζηλάκο, θα παρουσιάσουν τις εισηγήσεις τους. Παρακαλώ να πάρουν τις θέσεις τους οι ομιλητές.
Kalimera. It's a real pleasure for me to be here and to discuss and talk with you about certain aspects of the way in which the Open University has embraced Moodle and made it the center of our online learning system. For those people who haven't encountered the UK Open University, here are a few statistics about it. It is a university that for the past 41 years has supported open learning in distance learning mode as its function. Even though when we started, we only had things like radio, television, and the telephone, we were committed to using the technology that was available to produce the best learning material we could. In 2009-10, as you can see, we have over 251,000 students. We provide 530 undergraduate modules and 161 postgraduate modules or courses. We also have PhD students studying for doctorates with members of our academic staff. We do also have quite a comprehensive academic program from courses and programs in arts and social science on the one hand, down to education, engineering, technology, law, languages on the other. But I want to go back to the beginning of our interaction with Moodle, and the beginning is the year 2004. We came to the conclusion in that year that the online learning tools that we had, well, some of them worked quite well. They were not integrated. They did not produce a virtual learning environment or a learning management system, depending on your choice of terminology. So what we needed to do was to conduct a major review of OU learning and teaching systems. That included having presentations and discussions with all the major LMS suppliers, WebCT, Blackboard, LearnWise, and a few of the less well-known ones like the University of Leeds, Nathan Boddington. We knew also that we wanted to, and we did, have visits to other institutions that were running one of these systems to find out how well they felt they were doing with them. And we did a very serious and probably the first requirements gathering exercise across the Open University. And we ended up with 51 areas of functionality that we wanted our virtual learning environment to be able to deliver. In the end, the basic choice came down to either taking on a commercial system such as WebCT or Blackboard, or to take the tools that we already had and using a web services architecture, weave them together into our own individual VLE or virtual learning environment. And in trying to come to a conclusion as to the way in which we should move, there were serious choices of cost benefit that we had to face, and also the fact that with 8,000 part-time tutors working in our system, the training and staff development program would be huge if we took on a new system. And in all of this, our principal concern has been and still is to maximize the quality of the student learning experience. So, on the 6th of July, 2005, the big decision got taken. Tony Blair, then Prime Minister, said, a momentous day for Britain. Seb Coe, who was an athlete, said the most fantastic opportunity to do everything we ever dreamed of. Of course, what they were talking about was London beating Paris to take the 2012 Olympics. But our big decision was on the same day, and it was the day we decided we'd go with Moodle, because it did a lot of what we needed, and we could make it do what it didn't, and it would scale to our traffic levels, and with 250,000 students, we have pretty high traffic levels. And it was, and it is, and I expect it always will be open source, which fitted with our concept of openness in higher education. And fortuitously, a Moodle expert had been hired in our production department just at that time, which gave us a very good head start in trying to figure out how we needed to develop Moodle into the virtual learning environment that we seek. The seriousness of our intent, I think, stands out from the press release that was released on the 8th of November 2005, and the opening line says, the Open University's Learning and Teaching Office, which at that time reported to me, has started a new program worth nearly £5 million to build a comprehensive online student learning environment for the 21st century. And I believe we are still in that quest, and we are still looking to provide a comprehensive online student learning environment that will meet the needs of the 21st century. So we built a 2-year initial roadmap of the things that we needed to do to develop Moodle, with the full cooperation of Moodle itself. And I don't expect that you should be able to read all those individual boxes, but just the visual will let you know that it really was a comprehensive and quite demanding development program that we committed ourselves to. And it had 3 different segments. First, there were in-house developments that we were going to take, an OU blog, an OU wiki. My stuff was an e-portfolio that we were developing. NewFeed was an RSS feed functionality, and Data Plus was a new database that we were going to use to replace the existing Moodle database. And there were more on top of that. Secondly, we worked with the Moodle organization itself, and we part-funded several major developments. One in roles and permissions, which simply sets out who can see what within the system. Accessibility improvements to improve the learning chances of people with different forms of disability, and a new gradebook in Moodle 1.9. And thirdly, there were some special developments that we had been working on ourselves, which we wanted to integrate with Moodle. One is a quiz engine called OpenMark, which I'll come back to later in this talk. We wanted to integrate Illuminate, and we wanted to see, through pilot studies, how well Illuminate functioned in online tutorials. And thirdly, a structured content and structured authoring system, which allows our academics to author their work in Word. We convert that to an XML document, and that allows us then to port that document either to print, or to the web, or to the VLE, or to translate print into speech for people with visual difficulties, and a publishing system for to port to mobile devices. So what have we learned so far? Actually, I've edited some of the negative bits. I thought I'd be positive on this occasion. So the first thing we learned was to keep soliciting requirements. If you go out and ask your academic and teaching staff what they want, you'll certainly get some good ideas coming back to you. Secondly, never underestimate the traffic, the way the load on the system of large-scale use can actually produce bottlenecks. Thirdly, keep evangelizing. Sell this thing, sell it, sell it. Get your academic staff, your teaching staff, and your students motivated to use it so that the system can provide that support that we were talking about and also develop from one year to the next. But finally, your VLE is never finished. There's always more to do. We have always found more that we would like and to some extent need to do to take the system on. So where are we now? Well, we're certainly operating at scale. With over 5,000 sites on the main VLE, and at least 550 of them or more currently live, 648,000 users in the database, although we have 168,000 of those are currently active. In any 24-hour period, we are servicing the needs of 35 to 50,000 students. And in terms of how many students are studying at any one individual time, it's somewhere between 2,000 and 2,500. We also are still moving forward, and that can be broken up into current developments and some more challenging developments. The current developments are things that you probably would recognize. We want a better collaborative tool. We want to develop open mark engine, assessment engine, and also another system of assessment, which I'll come back to later. The structured content that I've just described to you, and reporting systems to find how students and staff are using the system and how they're getting on with it. And those are incremental developments, but the next one is a much more challenging development of fundamental support, of importance, and that says that we have committed ourselves to work with Google Apps for Education. What that will do, amongst other things, is allow our students to personalize their desktop to suit their needs while still working with Moodle and Moodle-developed functionality within the Moodle system. We also would like to be able to monitor the work of our tutorial staff, whom we call associate lecturers, and have a warning system when things are not working too well. That's what the dashboard refers to. Okay, where next? Well, it's got to be Moodle 2, and since we've got Martin Dugiem is here, I'm going to leave him to describe Moodle 2 and the development of Moodle 2, and I'd like to move on to a second part of the talk, which is really looking at a couple of our systems in detail. What we are looking for is the ability to refine some of our assessment and tutorial capability in order that we can produce the optimal tool set for online learners. Of course, it's going to be anchored into Moodle. This is Moodle on a portable device, one of the things we're looking at present. But Moodle will still sit at the center of our virtual learning environment. But I want to describe to you the Open Mark system, which is an assessment engine that we have been working with for some years, and it has some remarkable features to it. Now, the first thing to know is you don't have to know any mathematics in order to understand what it is I'm saying. This is a question that's set at the top. Come on, guys. There we are. Up here is a question that's set for the student. Over here, they're told the number of times tries they can have in order to get the right answer. Here, the first answer by the student is the number 3. The checkbox then tells us if they've got it right. Well, you come down here and the checkbox tells you that the answer was incorrect. It tells you to try again, but it also gives you a hint that a certain mathematical procedure called differentiation would actually form part of the answer. So try again. The second try produces the number 4, and you hit the checkbox again, and you find on this occasion the answer is the correct answer. So not only does the student find out what the correct answer is, but also is given one way of getting to that answer using the mathematics that is set out here. Well, this kind of helping people along with a quiz engine is quite a remarkable thing. It's taken us quite a long time to develop it. But there are some restrictions. Because each quiz line in that engine has to use the services of a Java programmer. And we would want our academic staff to be able to do the complete job of loading up a quiz engine and running it. And secondly, the quiz formats might be restrictive. An ambition we've had for some time is to be able to, really? 1 minute? Oh, God. Well, I'll steal a couple of minutes off the next presentation. They'd be restrictive, so we would like to be able to analyze student answers that are written in free text. And here's an example of what we've done. The picture there shows you a chunk of granite from the west of England, and the question, and in it you can see some large white structures which are crystals. And the question is, how is an igneous rock with large crystals such as this in this granite, how are they formed? So the student puts in their answer and then hits the checkbox, and the checkbox, the engine actually says, yes, that is the right answer, and gives a little extra information. We've also wanted to integrate Illuminate into our system, and here I will be very brief. What we've done is looked at an online tutorial taking place using Illuminate, and we've asked, how good is Illuminate for teaching maths? How can we make the best use of the tools? And how can the tools be improvised? There are a number of pieces of the data that we got back. The one that's really important or impressive is the one that says, would the staff actually use this again? And you'll see that the very likely number 5 line is supported by a very large majority of the staff who participated. So let me conclude by saying that from the very beginning, 41 years ago, in fact 43 for the real pioneers in the British Open University, we have been committed to using the technology of the time to produce new ways of teaching. And we believe that now there is an enormous possibility for ICT to provide both new and, we hope, better ways to teach traditional subjects and new communication skills that are part of the desired learning outcomes of education, both at public and at higher levels. And the challenge to do this well, I think, is really substantial. But the gains for the students at all levels is enormous. Thank you.
Yes. We're all here to hear Martin. So, as our chairman knows, a good player should not just put the ball in the basket, but should also give a good assist. I will be presenting to you an issue, an idea, try to get some insight from the fundamentals of computer science, and end up by proposing what I believe is an interesting research direction. So, our question is how to better design for e-learning. what do we design? We design courses, lessons, pieces of activities. Usually we think of them as teaching activities, but they should be educational activities and learning activities. And if we look back into the fundamentals of computer science, a couple of things are that programs and data are made of the same stuff. This is not trivial. When mathematics was able to deal with mathematics, we reached some of its limits. When our brain was able to deal with our brain, then we started understanding some of our limits. So it's a very interesting thing, and yet, in good software engineering, we keep data and programs distinct. However, in the object-oriented paradigm, objects are supposed to encapsulate both their data and methods. What is the analogy, if anything, in educational technology? And another fundamental thing from which we might have to learn is the issue of representation. In computer science, we learn how to represent things in order to compute with them, to let them be objects of algorithms. Now, let's go back to designing courses. I said that we usually design them from a teaching point of view. A standard curriculum usually says what the teacher does. But let's ask ourselves, what does the learner do when they learn? What do we do when we learn something? So we listen, we see, we attend, we read, and these are the simplest and less effective things that we do while we learn. Then we talk, we write, and present things, and these activities are much more helpful in learning. The most important thing that we do when we learn is to exercise, to train and think, and then we experiment, we design, and recently in human intellectual history, we also program, we do programs. That's more difficult to say in English because the Greek words are very good, is to think along with others, to talk with others, and act with others. So it's the collective part of learning. Let's do this a little bit more specific in a couple of examples. So if the task is to write, to somehow produce written word in any form, and this I would also include painting and drawing, we have the object, what we write, and that's a text, a picture, a drawing, a symbol, a program. And behind it is an intellectual activity. When we write, we could be just copying, or we could be translating in another language, adapting, making a precis, solving an exercise, or designing a thing. And behind that is a purpose. We may be copying in order to exercise. We may be copying in order to understand. We may be adapting in order to think. And at the end, the result is that we learn. We can make a similar series of things in all tasks. So if we think of speaking in any form of utterance, any form of producing oral speech, then again, our objects would be things like text, songs, prayers, poems, or conjugating in grammar. And the intellectual activities behind that could be to converse, to orate, to dictate, while the purpose, again, could be to memorize, to exercise, or to understand or prove. And finally, the result is learning. Now, all this in educational technology is translated into what is called learning objects. So is the Pythagorean theorem a learning object? Is a recording of a symphony a learning object? Or if we read, is this a learning activity, a learning task? If we solve an exercise, if we design an industrial process, is this a learning activity? Well, what makes it a learning activity, if it is one, is the intended usage. If we use the Pythagorean theorem as part of our exercise in a classroom, then it is a learning object. If we use it to design a piece of furniture and we are a carpenter, then that's not the point. So it is the intended usage that makes objects into learning objects and tasks into learning tasks. And that could be a pretty much standard definition that any piece of data or program that's used for learning, except that where is the purpose? The purpose is not in the object, the purpose is in our mind. And we could have various examples from classic texts to programs, to video lectures, to sets of questions, or textbooks. It does not need to be digital. But still we're lacking where is the intention. And the same thing about learning tasks. If the purpose of the task is learning, then whether solving an exercise, writing a program, practicing a bicycle or the musical instrument, drawing, designing, discussing, all these things can be learning tasks. And the combination of the two, a task applied to an object, will make us a learning activity. So I would say it's a pair, a learning object to a learning task. Let me again give a couple of examples. If I give you a classic text, Shakespeare's Hamlet, and say, make a list of adjectives, then Shakespeare's play is the learning object, and making the list of adjectives is the task. We can have this in programming, or in more complex cases, like if I give you a digitized dictation and ask you to type it and then find the errors in learning a foreign language. And in this case, again, the learning object would be a more complex thing, as complex as we like. A word processor, the soundtrack, and the speller is what the learning object is in this case. I said we still somewhere need to put our purpose, what makes the information object into a learning object. And those of you that have somehow dealt with this issue and you've read about metadata, you will have seen that in describing our objects, we can think of them, we can think this information in three categories. One is attributes that you could say they are adjectives. What the learning object is, who made it, who owns it. And this is part of the metadata. Then we have verbs, which is what the object does, what is the intention, what do we want to do with it. And it is there that we hide the intention. And finally, we have metadata in the forms of prepositional phrases. For whom, what is the environment, and what are the conditions for which it will be used. And there's a question about whether the evaluation and processes that relate to the learning object also belong there. I hinted that the issue of the representation is an important one. Well, how do we represent number 15? And the answer is it depends on the usage. If you want to put 15 on a building, you will probably use the Roman numeral. If you want to do an engineering calculation, you will probably say 0.15 E2. If you want to count votes, you will just draw lines, etc. So there's always, this is a fundamental thing in computer science, that the representation depends on the usage. And does this matter? Because remember, our question was, should we put the learning objects and the learning activities in one box, or should we separate them? Does it matter? We know in computers that there's always something called the internal representation. At the end, everything is bits, zeros and ones. Well, it does matter. At the background is a Kandinsky painting. And of course, it's RGB colors and numbers behind them. But do you imagine giving to Kandinsky, instead of a brush and paints, giving them an RGB slider to paint? So the representation of the tool is important when we have a specific job to do, and especially when we have a learning thing to do. So, if we are designing with the learner activity in the center, asking what does the learner do, not what does the teacher do, then we say that we have what it is, which is a noun, and what does the learner do with it, which is a verb. Read the text, solve the exercise, practice the musical instrument. And this is the parallel that we have from computer science: the data and its usage, the noun and the verb, the learning object and the learning activity. So the learner activities have this parallel. And what can we conclude from that? Well, the web is full of learning objects. If you ever looked for anything, I'm sure you met the problem not of finding one, but of finding too many. So I suggest, let's concentrate on the learning activities. And going back to this slide, it is these higher level intellectual activities that we are now lacking as tools to go to the next step of developing tools for e-learning. So we will need to study, understand, model, and make computational objects out of things like copying, translating, adapting, solving, designing. And I think this is an interesting and fruitful research and technology issue, how to make these things. And I believe, answering the original question, that for the time being, in the current stage, it will make sense to design learning objects and learning activities in an orthogonal way. Thank you.
Γεια σας. Τι κάνεις? I wish I could speak Greek. My father is Greek. My mother is German, and I grew up in Australia. And I never learnt. And I feel like we're all speaking English today just because of me and Paul. It's a bit embarrassing. But unfortunately, we're going to have to continue with English. Well, it's a very, very large pleasure to be here today. I've had a very warm welcome to Cyprus. It's also, just being in a Greek-speaking country as well is good. Everyone can usually pronounce my name and spell it. And as you know, Moodle is my thing, so we've got about an hour, and I've got about 2 hours worth of talking to do. I'll try not to go too fast, but let's get straight into it. I would like to focus more on the pedagogy side of things, although we'll talk about Moodle, the software, of course, as well. How many people here are active teachers, actively teaching? Whoa, probably 80% or something. It's good. How many people here teach at a university level? Okay, down the front. Interesting. High school level? Sort of lyceum, is it? Primary school? Little kids? Quite a lot, maybe 10, 20%. Okay. How many people here are more administration of education? So maybe 10, more shy. Okay. All right, well, good. That gives me an idea. So let's, first of all, everyone's been talking about open source, and maybe some of you are not familiar with this word, so this term. So just very quickly say what open source is. Open source is when software is free, and in English the word free is used in two ways. One, it costs nothing, and secondly, you have freedoms that come with it. I don't know if you have those, maybe you probably have two separate words in Greek for these two ideas, hopefully. So you have all these freedoms. You're also free to participate in the project, and you're free to come and go as you wish and participate at any level. So that's important. There are many licenses that come with free software, and they're all built on copyright. So someone who makes something, they have the copyright over it. And then they license it based on that copyright for others to use. And so the GPL is one of the most common open source licenses that's used. In some of the other presentations, people like Paul have been talking a lot at the Open University about Moodle, but also many, many other things, and the Open University of Cyprus as well, other tools that go with Moodle. And that's because Moodle is designed to be a platform. Inside Moodle, there is the core software and some modules, and people make small modifications perhaps. And then on top of that, you have course designs for the learning activities and objects. That last presentation was really interesting, actually. It's a very good model. I liked it. And then there's the user contributions in there as well. The things that teachers and students say and write and create inside the environment is part of the environment. But then all these other things, repositories, student information systems, portfolios, payment systems, authentication, video conferencing, plagiarism, reports, many other things, Moodle doesn't do those things. So the approach is that we build integrations or places that Moodle can integrate with these things. And so a lot of Moodle sites are very different from each other because each institution will take Moodle and build on top of it and add things to it and connect it and so on. So that's our approach. So we focus on being a course management system. Very quickly, I'm going to go through some statistics. Just about hit 50,000 registered verified sites, so there are actually many more sites there. We only know about sites when people press a button to tell us, and a lot of people never do that. But these are the ones that we know about where people have told us, and every week we check their sites to make sure there's still Moodle there. And if the site moves or something, that gets taken off the statistics. So this is a very bare minimum level of numbers. Quite a lot of people, too many people. There's some very large sites, as you've heard. It's very multinational. And we also have a whole community I'll talk about around that. These are the top 10 countries. Only 3 of them speak English. the USA is obviously fairly large, but per capita, I think Spain is the biggest Moodle user. They only have 44 million versus the US has, what, 250 million or something people. And you can see on the map there where things are happening. There's some dots there for Cyprus, and one of them is probably your site, Paniotis, I think. There's about, I think I looked it up yesterday, there was 35 Moodle sites in Cyprus, registered ones that we know about. How many people here are one of those Moodle sites, run one of those Moodle sites? Anybody? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, yeah, about 10 hands, that's good. Moodle is mostly still used in universities, although secondary schools are a very close second. Companies use Moodle. We have a lot of independent teachers using Moodle. So they're just a teacher, maybe at home. Maybe they're retired and they've got something to teach and they're able to make a website and teach one course. These are some of the universities that use Moodle. Some of the more impressive ones all over the world. And in Australia now, by next year, something like 60% of all the universities will be using Moodle, which is amazing because throughout Moodle's history, I actually never really focused on Australia. I always talked with people overseas. It's always been international from the start, and only recently Australians have started using it. It's interesting. I think all their Blackboard licenses ended about the same time. We have a lot of companies that use Moodle. Surprising, some of these companies, because obviously they could afford anything they wanted. They don't need to use free software because of the money. So they're using free software because of the freedom aspect, and they're able to customize it the way they wish. Google use Moodle for all their internal training. And I saw that site, and it's a very nice feeling to see that, see Google using it. People, I should show this because people always ask, well, how does Moodle survive? How does open source work? Who pays for it? We have a business model. In the middle is Moodle.com, which is basically my company. And we have 15 or 16 staff and growing. And we look after the Moodle software. Still, my company still writes about 60%, 70% of the actual code in Moodle. And the rest comes from a developer community. There's about 250 people around the world who have some input into the code, some access to actually write and change the code. There are many more developers who are not associated with us who, again, maybe they work at Shell or Google and they take Moodle and they customize it and we never hear from them. Okay, so that we don't know about those. There's many of them, but they don't necessarily send their code back to the project. They just keep it local. And we also look after Moodle.org, which is the website where all the community interacts, where people give feedback on features. We discuss what to do and where to go with Moodle. And also people support each other. And there's about 50,000 people a month who are very active users. I think we have 1.5 million or something registrations, but there's about 50,000 people who are very active. So it's very busy. And then there are Moodle partners, which are companies that specialize in services around Moodle, support, training, consulting, hosting, and people who, Moodle users who need those services can go to them. And they pay royalties to the my Moodle company. It's about 10% of what they earn. And that's how it all works. So the rich are paying for the poor, in a way. It's the Robin Hood model. And it works. Everyone gets what they want. Everyone has choice. And nobody's locked in. So Moodle has a history. It's over 11 years ago, I was writing the first prototype versions of Moodle. went through a few different designs before I settled on the one that we have. And in those early days, I was at a university and I was trying to think of something. I was trying to make something better than what was available. And I got I was working from home. I was all alone for years, long, hard days. It takes a long time. And now you look at it and I show you these numbers. They amaze me every time I look at them. I don't want to, they're too scary to look at sometimes because, I'm still remembering how it started. So let me talk to you a bit about where I was in those first few years, because I was doing academic research at the same time, and this was part of the development of Moodle. So my PhD thesis was entitled An Exploration of the Use of an Open Source Software called Moodle to Support a Social Constructionist Epistemology, it's a good word, of teaching and learning within internet-based communities of reflective inquiry. We have a game we used to play at university called Buzzword Bingo. Have you heard of this game? So, where the students would sit in the lecture and you'd have some words, and when the lecturer said a word, you'd cross it off your list, and when you got all the words, you were the winner, and you go, bingo! This was a bit like this. I tried to get every word in the thesis into the title. My thesis itself, I wrote as a Moodle course. So there's lots of recursion in what I do. I like recursive things. Computer science background originally. This was an education thesis though. So I was developing my thesis as a Moodle course, and it was very distracting because I would think of a new way to do references, maybe automatic bibliographic references, and so I'd go and start writing software in a new module and get distracted. But it was very, very good. I haven't put this on the web yet. I always meant to put it on the web and make it an active course where people could navigate the thesis, comment on chapters and so on. I never quite finished that. Probably the most basic concept that I got out of all the studies I did in that period and all the case studies I was doing with the Moodle software, because I was teaching courses at the university as well, and experimenting on my guinea pigs, was this, that with people and software tools, you can create a community. This was a fundamental concept here. Ideally, that community has some experts, some skilled facilitators who are structuring the activities in there. So in a course, that would be a teacher. In Moodle, that would be myself originally. But the whole community is teaching the individuals. The individuals are learning from everybody in the group, not just from the teacher. And simultaneously, the community can improve the tool. So in a course, the students, if they give you feedback as a teacher, you can change the course. Maybe they already know this subject for this week, so skip it. Bring in some new topic instead. Or maybe they all need extra work on this topic, so you spend an extra week on that. Or maybe some of them suggests, hey, there's a really great website here that covers this. So everyone can go there and we'll use that. So you change the content as you go. And on the Moodle level, as a project, very much the community are contributing to the development of Moodle, as I described before. And so this model worked on these two levels. And it's just a very simple model, really, but it does open you up to lots of different ideas and get away from the concept of education as transmitting knowledge. So I had a pedagogical focus of 5 points. Whoa, five points, and they're still from the beginning, and I still use these as my referent, as my compass. So whenever I need to make decisions about the Moodle software, I will still go back to these 5 principles. So the first one is that everyone is a potential teacher as well as a learner. Everyone in a collaborative group, in a course, in a community of any kind. And ideally, we are both. Secondly, we learn particularly well when we're creating things, when we're making things. And this is Aristotle. It's not a new idea, learning by doing, but often it does get forgotten. You still see people teaching, and here we are in a very delivering environment, but if we really wanted to get into this subject, we would be a lot more, you'd all be a lot more involved. You should be all a lot more involved, and you should be creating things, maybe presenting to each other, some case studies and so on. So, but creating anything is the best way to learn. And the key point is creating it for someone else. If you know someone else is going to see it, then you think differently about it. It really makes you think about it. For example, a presentation that you're going to give in front of 400 people. Thirdly, you learn from the culture that you're in, from the peers that you're with. And this isn't a direct, implicit learning, explicit learning. You're not being taught, but you are learning from how people are behaving. And this is a very natural thing that humans do. Everywhere where we are in groups, we have certain norms of behavior that we learn implicitly about how to behave. And it's in a classroom situation, you should be thinking about building a culture, a sharing culture, a culture where people are open to speak, for example. And if people see other people doing it, then they'll feel more comfortable to do it. And it's important referent. The fourth one is that you can teach somebody. If you're having a dialogue with someone and you're trying to teach them something, if you know their background, if you know their issues and their life and where they are, you're able to teach them better. And this is Vygotsky, constructivism. And so it's important to know your students. It's important to know your audience. It's important to know as well as possible. And the advice you get from a close friend about a relationship problem or something is likely to be a lot better than the advice you get from some random person who doesn't know you, for example. And the fifth referent is that a learning environment should be very flexible and adaptable, because all these other things, for them to happen, it means the course is going to change, you're going to react. It's a dialogue. This is a photograph. Oh, it's very dark on here. You can't see it very well. I was at CERN about a month ago, and this is their control room. And it's very generic. They have these circles of computer monitors, and they can show anything on all the monitors. They can change the monitors according to whatever project they're working on. They have a little meeting table inside this circle of monitors here. They have a slightly bigger meeting table in the middle of the room, and then they have like a really big meeting room as well. And so they can very quickly call a meeting. If it's for 3 people, let's meet here. If it's for 6 people, let's meet here. If it's for 100 people, let's meet here. All the chairs are on wheels, can be moved around. And so it's a flexible environment, and they can adjust. And CERN has lots of research projects that they go through, and it changes. Just as an example, it's not a lecture theatre. It's not a NASA mission control room or anything. It's a much more collaborative environment. And a learning management system on the internet needs to be the same. It needs to be flexible so that a physics teacher can use it, and also a sociology teacher can use it. Different subjects, different approaches, but they can customize it. So these 5 points are what I always use for the design of Moodle, and I thought that if I was thinking about these things as I was designing the software and as I was creating modules in Moodle and guiding the development, I thought that teachers would understand that too. And that was what my thesis was about. Can a tool promote certain epistemologies, certain ways of thinking? Well, we'll talk about that in a minute. Out of all this, this is just an interesting little side thing. What do you think is the simplest possible pedagogical technique in online learning and any kind of teaching at all, do you think? Anyone want to guess? Anybody? Somebody? What's the simplest? Think of your own teaching. What's a little technique you might use that just a little thing that you could even say in 2 words that helps you teach better? Role play? Yeah, it's a good one. That's not what I'm thinking of, but it's a good one. Anyone else? Open discussion, brainstorming. We're having one now. Anyone else? No? I'm not going to dwell too long on this because it's just a small point. But asking questions, right? If you start thinking, if you come from the point of view that my course is a place where I'm going to be asking questions, that leads you into all these other things I'm talking about. More than that, if you think of your course as a place where you are going to encourage the students to ask questions, even better. The more questions there are, in my experience, the better quality of a course. So keep that in mind. If you don't remember anything else, I just remember asking questions. And this is Socrates, right? Socratic questioning. It was very nice when I was doing all this research. I was looking at all the Eastern European and American research and English research, and I was following them back, and it all comes back to ancient Greece somewhere, and that was quite nice. So is all this stuff, are people using Moodle like this? Well, unfortunately, for my thesis, perhaps no. And there's a good explanation for it, a constructivist explanation, is that people will tend to do what they did before, and they move very slowly. So the first thing everybody does, usually, is they publish content. They have content, they have maybe handouts they used to use, they have textbooks, they have files on their computer, and the first thing they do is to put them online. And that's really great, it's a good thing. But it's the very first step. It doesn't, all this other stuff I've talked about, it doesn't really get to them. So what I've noticed is that as people get more familiar with teaching online, that they move through a progression. And this isn't a very approximate progression. Not everyone does this the same way. But there's sort of 10 levels that I see of becoming a really good online educator. So starting from number 1. Secondly, having a forum. Now, forum immediately gives you a place to ask questions. It gives you a place to discuss, to have feedback, to communicate. It's dynamic and is a good thing to have. But if you just have a passive forum sitting there and you say to your students, hey, here's a forum, they won't get used very much. Because students don't do things unless there's grades usually, right? There's exceptions, of course, but generally a passive forum is not very successful. But it's better than not having a forum. Thirdly, quizzes and assignments. We're all very familiar with these concepts from many, many years. And so when you go online, you can do an online quiz. Like Paul was showing, quizzes can do more than paper quizzes. Online quizzes can do more than a paper quiz. And also, they can be graded automatically as well, so you save a lot of management. So quizzes are a very good thing to do online. A lot of people understand that, get straight into quizzes. And the same with assignments. Instead of a big stack of paper, you now have a big collection of PDFs or Word documents or something, and you can download them onto your laptop and grade them and send them back, and it's much easier. Moving beyond that into collaboration online. So far, this has all just been, it's mostly just between the teacher and the student. It's very teacher-centered. Once you get into collaboration, you open up a rich vein of ideas. In Moodle, we have wikis and glossaries and databases, and they're places where students can contribute content. Now, you don't just say, oh, fill it with content. You make it specific. You say, okay, we're going to, maybe you're studying biology, You go on a field trip up into the mountains of Cyprus, and the students maybe have cameras or something, and you say, I want you to take a photograph of a plant or an animal and bring that back, research what it is, find its Latin name, find information on the internet about it, and I want you all to collect this information in a database that we can now use. So maybe this is the first week of the course, and then the second week of the course you use that database for the next activity, and the next activity, and the next activity. And so you're getting the students to collaboratively build the content. And maybe next year, in the same course, you'll do it again. Even though you already had a database, you maybe do it again because the process of creating that database is where the learning is happening. Yeah, it's learning by doing. So what? You could probably download that database, but that's not as good as making it. So collaborative content gets much more interesting. I was alluding with the passive forum before. People who are good at teaching online are good at facilitating discussions. So they ask questions, and then when they have answers, they look for more questions, and they find these people are talking about different things. Why are they different? Or maybe you're all talking about the same thing. Here's a general principle based on these individual concepts. So active discussions are very, very powerful. You can actually teach 80 or 90% of a course just using forums if you're good at it. As you get more comfortable with these concepts, combining activities, like I said before. I know an English teacher who was very, very good at this and would, in the early weeks, get the students to read a book or a poem and then ask them to take their favourite paragraph from that book. And then from the paragraph, find the key word. What's the key word for this paragraph, the key concept here? And get them to collect it in a database. And then ask them to then take 2 or 3, or say 3 of these definitions of words that they didn't create from the other students and combine them in a poem. Write a poem that uses these 3 words. Yeah? Or actually, I know another teacher in Harlem in New York, and their students, sort of very black, disadvantaged students, were very hard to get them to do anything like this. But as soon as she said, instead of saying write a poem or write an assignment, as soon as she said write a rap song, yeah, they got really into it. So they were rapping to each other, writing rap lyrics, and they thought it was a really fun game. But they were actually writing English, and they were learning concepts of communication. So then you can use the output. Maybe you write some poems, and then you say, okay, I want you to publish that into a forum, and I want you to give feedback on the other students. And then I want you to perhaps summarize some of that in the assignment. And then we're going to have a quiz, and the quiz questions are going to be based on what happened 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. So layering activities and these learning activities into sequences is very, very powerful. And it makes it fun and engaging. It's what students like. On top of that, you can bring in things from the internet. The internet is full of great, great stuff, great sites, learning content. There are Flash-based games. There are games out there that you can actually provide your own content to. So a little example, there is a Flash game called Fling the Teacher, like throw the teacher. And when you first come to it, you design a face which looks like your teacher. This is good for school children. You can make a picture of your teacher, and then you put the teacher on a catapult, and you have to answer a whole lot of questions. Now, the teacher has put the questions in there. Now, there might be maths questions or multiple choice questions of any subject. And if you get all 10 questions correct, the teacher gets on the catapult, right? So younger students would find that it's really fun just to see their teacher be flung through the air. And that's a very simple little website. It's a web page. You could bring that into your course as one activity, just to integrate the possibilities. You don't have to create everything from scratch. a teacher getting into this stuff will become more reflective, I hope, become an action researcher of their own community. Once you start to look into what the interactions are between the students, you want to know more. You want some metrics, and everything, all business and institutions taking up metrics to measure what's happening. And in Moodle we have some survey tools that you can use to survey your students. Ask them how they're going, how do they feel about the interactions with you? How do they feel about the interactions with their peers? How do they find the content, and so on and so on. And so with that introduces a feedback loop, so you can understand your students better, and they can understand better what you want. In Moodle, it's possible to give your students more power. And the focus of power, of control, is a very interesting question online. It's scary, it's quite scary to give control away as a teacher, because traditionally teachers had all the control. Sit down, shut up, listen, and I will teach you. But now, in today's world, everyone's more used to having more control, things being more open. And so the balance of control and where you draw that line as the facilitator is important. For me, it was not easy to give control of parts of Moodle over to other people and say, yep, you are now responsible for this, and you're responsible for this, and you're responsible for this. But I almost always found it was a good thing to do, and I got more back than I expected. Not always, usually. So for example, inside Moodle, you can actually let your students create activities from scratch. You can give them that power. You can say to this student, because you did so well in the assignment, I'm going to make you the facilitator for this forum. So you can actually facilitate this forum. And that's a great learning experience as well. That's another, you're just giving them more learning experiences and more opportunities to construct and build. We also have in Moodle tools like the workshop module, where the students can grade the other students. So peer grading. If you're grading someone, you really want to learn that topic. It helps you learn. The way we've got it, the way it is in Moodle, is there's lots of checks and balances so that not all the students don't just give each other 100%. First of all, you give them an example thing to grade, and you grade their grading. So you model the behaviour, and it works. And you have multiple students grading each assignment, so they have to be relatively equal to be accepted. If they're 70, 70, 70, and 100, you know the person who gave 100 is probably a good friend of that person. And also it keeps them anonymous and so on. So very good learning activities. But it takes courage to start doing these things. And finally, looking beyond your own environment, connecting with people who are in your situation around the world or around your country. So there's no reason why all of the people teaching accounting in Cyprus can't talk to each other and share ideas on how to teach accounting in Cyprus. There's no reason other than it wasn't done very much before. And everywhere in the world there are teachers with the same subject, the same level, the same problems, the same ideas, doing the same thing over and over. But there are communities of practice that are yet to be built that I think are going to be very, very interesting. And so as a teacher who's very engaged in your teaching, you would be looking for those communities of practice. Yes, there's things like journals, yeah, get involved in journals, but also on the web there are forums, there are all kinds of places where you can find people doing the same as you. So that's my progression. Now, that's the heart of this talk. I wanted to make that in the middle and spend the most time on it. On that last point, something we have in Moodle 2 is this concept of community hubs. And it's all about finding two things. One, finding examples of best practice. So if you're teaching physics inside Moodle, there must be somebody out there who's also been teaching physics in Moodle. Can I see their course? Can I get a template version of their course to start with? And then I can modify it. And the second thing is, how do you find communities of practice? How can a physics teacher find all the other physics teachers who speak Greek, perhaps, to have a Greek physics teachers forum somewhere? All it takes is one person to start that, one Greek physics teacher, Greek-speaking physics teacher, to say, I'm going to make a forum and to discuss my subject. Then all we need to do is actually let other people find that place and come. And so that's what the community hubs are about, those two things. So this diagram looks a little complex, but basically up the top there you've got a user on an ordinary Moodle site. Maybe they're building a course, so we need some way for them to search a database of courses to get one. And it's very similar to some of the presentations earlier today, which was very interesting to me, how similar actually the ideas are, we're all thinking the same direction. And secondly, maybe you just want to find a course. You might even be a student who wants to find a course on learning Greek, for say. How do you find that? You can use Google, but maybe there's better ways. So I can show you this. Actually, it's probably better to show you what it looks like. So this is a Moodle site running Moodle 2. And I haven't got time to show you all the new features of Moodle 2 unless you really want to ask me later. There's lots, but we have things like these are blocks now up on the side, like little navigation menus and things. Now, we have this new block called the community block, and I can type search. And the administrator configures one or more hubs, a hub server to connect to. And a hub is just a directory of courses. Anybody can run a hub. We've made that software open source. There will be one hub, probably the biggest one, will be running at moodle.org, and it's called Mooch, the moodle.org Open Community Hub. You may not be familiar in English. Mooch is a word which means steal. A little, sort of like you can go and just steal a course. Not steal in a bad way. It's kind of when somebody comes to your house and eats all your food and your drink. They're mooching off you. So that's one hub. However, because that software is open source, there will be others. And some of them will be regional. So someone could set up a Cyprus hub. Someone could set up a European hub. Somebody could set up a technology institute hub. You know, any specialty they choose. The Mooch is very general. So at the moment I've only got the one, so that's selected. And I can say, find me courses I can enroll in, find me courses I can download. And I can choose, talking about your purpose and things here and your audience. Is it for educators? Is it for students? Is it for administrators? Let's just say any. Primary, secondary, tertiary, government, association, corporate, other. We've got subjects, a full range of subjects. What license should it be under? What language? We've got a lot of languages. And so on. And we can put keywords to search as well. And this is the new help in Moodle. Just it'll pop up help like this now. Yeah, something's gone wrong there. Okay, so we search. Oh, that's why I'm offline. How did I get offline? Web is Moodle. Have we lost the Wi-Fi? Anyone? No? Maybe. Okay. We might have lost the Wi-Fi. That Moodle site was running on my laptop, but it needs to communicate to Mooch, right, to do the search. And if I can't get online... To what? Okay, I'm not going to... it doesn't look like I can connect here. Never mind. I think I have a slide, actually, which shows you what the search looks like. Okay, I'll just show this. So when you do the search, this is actually the same interface on the hub.moodle.org. Oh, we've got Ethernet. Okay, great. Is it? It's gone completely from here. Ethernet, no. It's fine. I was using it before. It's been working all day. Just now it's not. Okay. Anyway, you can sort of see at the bottom there. It's not very clear because it's just a screenshot at the bottom. But you get back courses, and these are whole Moodle courses. You click a download button, and your Moodle site will download the backup file, unpack it into your course. And now you have that course. And you can change it, edit it, delete things, add things, customize it. Everything in the directory has ratings and comments. And I think this is going to be very, very powerful because it's all built into Moodle. It's all within the Moodle interface. And it will enable sharing. You can also publish courses, obviously. It enables sharing even in a small community. Maybe there's 3 institutions that want to collaborate together. They can create their own hub and do that. So that's going to be very good. People say, well, teachers never want to publish. But on the scale we have, the worldwide scale, it only takes one person to write a really good physics course. It's done. Everyone can use that. And once you have one, even if it's not very good, somebody will use it and they go, oh, I could do this better, and they'll roll up their sleeves and they'll start fixing it, and they'll share it back because they only did a bit of the work, not all of it. And so I'm very positive about this. This is actually the direction I've been trying to go for about 6 years. And finally, we have all the pieces in place and it's a reality. So I'm very, very happy about it. What are the other things in Moodle 2? Lots of things. We've spent 2.5 years. Almost all of you will be using Moodle 1.9 if you're using Moodle. The last 2.5 years, or even nearly 3 years, we've been working on Moodle 2. And all these things, so there's lots of rewrites and improvements on those things on the left. One of the key things is file storage. The way we deal with files is completely new. Lots of security improvements, lots of rewriting. Moodle has about 1.5 million lines of PHP code. And we've been refactoring it. Like a lot of these things here, we've had to change every script. So you go, let's change how we handle files. Let's change how we handle databases. Let's change how we handle languages. So for 2.5 years, we've been refactoring, rewriting, cleaning up the way the code is being, the platform is built underneath. And we've spent all this time doing it because we don't want to do it again. And we want to now have Moodle 2 as a platform that people can build on top of and have some security that it's going to stay. The foundations will stay solid, they won't change, and so on. So all of these things here. There's lots of new features, which I can show you if you want to see any. I don't know how much time we have. How much time do we have, actually? How much time have I got? 15 minutes. Okay. What's that? Oh, thanks. So I've got time to show you a couple of these. The navigation's changed, community hubs. We now support repositories, so Moodle can connect directly to collections of content and pull it in. So Flickr, YouTube, all those kinds of Web 2 services, but also you might have a document management system in your own institution where you store all your documents with metadata and version control and workflow. Moodle can connect and pull those documents in. We have support for portfolios. So you can push a student or a teacher who wants to capture some work they've done, can push it to a portfolio and make a collection of examples of their own work. Completion, it's now possible to complete a course. Depending on what you've done, you can have automatic completion. Conditional activities means you can't do this one until you've done that one. And you can't do that one until you've got 50% on that quiz. And you can't get to the quiz until you've read the course conditions, the course information, right? So you can make sequences. Cohorts are groups of people at the site level. So you can say, enroll these 100 people in this course. Bam. Web Services API. Anyone who's into IT will like this one because Moodle is now remotely controllable. Another system can talk to Moodle via a standard way and create users, create courses, put users into courses, create a forum, post onto the forum, all these things. Secure RSS feeds. You can have information streaming out of Moodle onto your phone or whatever devices you have. We have support for IMS Common Cartridge, which is a new content standard from the IMS organisation. That's mostly going to be produced by publishers. So people who make textbooks may provide a course with it, and that course will be in IMS Common Cartridge format. So you can import that and run it in Moodle. You can now blog. In the blog tool, you can blog about something. So if you're in a course, you can write a blog entry about the course, and it's connected to the course. Or you can blog about the assignment, or blog about the forum or something, and we have comments. You can also synchronize your blog in Moodle with a blog that you maybe have on the web somewhere. Maybe you use a WordPress site or something for your blog. You can say, anything I write on the external blog that has these keywords, I want them automatically synchronized into my Moodle blog. So maybe you put the tag school on something on your main blog, it'll automatically get put into the Moodle blog. And mobile integration. These smartphones with touch screens are really the future. More and more people use these instead of computers. I find this has replaced the use of my computer quite a lot, and it increases. So we are building apps for iPhone and Android to start with that use the web services to communicate with Moodle in a completely unique way. So the interface is completely different to the web. It won't look like the web interface at all. It just implements the tools that you need as a student or as a teacher. And it's very effective. And it also uses the camera, uses the microphone. So imagine you're a teacher, in the morning a whole lot of assignments come down onto you synchronize with your Moodle site, you have all your assignments here to mark, to grade, and you can flip through them, you can give them grades, and you can give them an audio comment. Blah, 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 what I thought about your assignment. And then at the end of the day, you hit synchronize, and all that information gets pushed back up to the website, and the students can then see it. So that's a use case of these kind of things, which is different from the web. Students, for example, maybe it's a sculpture class, their assignment is to create a sculpture. They could use their phone, take a photograph of the sculpture, hit send, straight into the assignment. Right. Moodle 2 is nearly ready. I mean, it'll be officially released in about 3 weeks, 4 weeks. It's working. We're just still polishing a little, but it's working. It's all done. Beyond that, we're working on Moodle 2.1, 2.2, 2.3. The main focus of Moodle 2 was big changes to the base of Moodle, to the functionality of the core Moodle. We actually haven't changed the pedagogical tools very much. The forum hasn't changed much, the assignment module hasn't changed too much. In the next release, that's the focus. No more core changes. We're going to be rewriting the assignment module completely, rewriting the forum completely, probably based on the OU forum that they developed at Open University. Survey will be merging these two modules, questionnaire and feedback will be merging into one big module that does every kind of survey. Choice, lesson, quiz, they're all getting a big revamp. And we're going to take all the feedback from the community from the last few years to create a new specification for the new module and just redo it, refactor completely. So that's going to be really great, and I'm very much looking forward to that process. Grading is going to get quite a lot of work. There is a lot of community-developed modules out there that we'll be bringing in. That some of them are very popular and a lot of people use them, but they're not in the core Moodle product. We'll be bringing them in, and so on. But Moodle 2 is like a new operating system. It's like a learning management operating system, and it's customizable, just like you have a Windows or a Mac or a Linux. Everybody's machine looks different. Everyone has different applications. Everybody customizes it the way they like, and you create your information technology environment out of that operating system. And that's what Moodle is like too. It's an operating system for online teaching and learning, and it's designed to be customized. It's designed to be modified and turned into the exact tool for the job. And that's about that. A comment on Dias. That looks really cool, really cool. There's probably opportunities to integrate Moodle with Dias. Just speaking with someone, with Paniotis before. It's, I think with software now, it's not so much choosing a particular piece of software as choosing the structure or choosing the standards for communication between software. Integrating tools is really where the future is, I think. So yeah, I think it's all good. Any questions, please? You're first, actually. I don't know if you want to do any translations or anything. Yeah.
Yeah, Moodle is a fantastic, I mean, there is a general consideration and general concern about people wanted to use Moodle, and they say it's a very nice raw material, but it takes effort and investment to customize. What's your comment on that?
Yes, it does. Because I think everyone has a different need. It really is designed as a tool to customize. It's impossible to make something that works straight away for universities and primary schools and corporate everything. You know, they're all different, and so it needs to be customizable. So yes, it does take some work, but I think the results are worth it.
Thank you. I think it's time for the panel, so I think we should ask Thanasis to join up there.
Okay. Cool.
And at the same time, I'd like to also have the first question.
Oh, of course. Well, I'll sit down.
The second question, okay. I was corrected. I'm going to state my question in English, and then I'm going to state it in Greek for the rest of them. It was nice to hear from all three of you about what happened. The issue is that you have a very diverse population, as you notice in this room. This population ranges from people that maybe never use the tool to somebody that administers a Moodle site. So, the question for the two of you, and sometimes I like to think about it as they say you have to say these things without fear and without passion. I say you have to do it without fear and with passion. What are the three things we need to do as a culture here in order to promote e-learning and the tools that we've seen that we're starting to scratch the surface? Before you answer, let me repeat that in Greek. Η ερώτηση που έβαλα στους κυρίους ήταν ότι είδαμε πάρα πολλά πράγματα σήμερα και ο γεγονός ότι είμαστε ένα πολύ γενικό ακροατήριο, το οποίο έχει να κάνει από τα μικρά πράγματα που έχουν να κάνουν με την ηλεκτρονική εκπαίδευση μέχρι άτομα τα οποία χειρίζονται τους εξυπηρετήσεις που έχουμε στο πανεπιστήμιο. Βλέποντας όλα αυτά τα πράγματα, η ερώτηση μου θα ήταν χωρίς πάθος και χωρίς φόβο και με πολύ πάθος, να μας πούν ποια είναι τουλάχιστον τα τρία πράγματα που θα πρέπει εμείς να κάνουμε στα πανεπιστήμια, στα δημοτικά μας, στα γυμνάσια μας, για να αρχίσουμε να μπαίνουμε σε αυτήν τη διαδικασία.
Well, I'll start with one. I think I'll start with two. People need to see best practice. So examples, which is the reason for the Community Hub stuff, is about spreading examples of best practice. A lot of people have never seen a good online course because they never had it in their generation, or they've never had the opportunity, or because it's all quite new still to many people. So I think seeing best practice, and beyond that, experiencing best practice, actually being in a really good online course is the only way to really understand how good they can be. A really good online course gets you so involved that the next morning you find yourself just checking on the website to see what people replied to what you said the night before. Because you're engaged in that conversation and you want to see what people thought about what you said. So once a course gets to that level, it's exciting and it's fun and everything just goes naturally after that. But I think a lot of people have never experienced that. So maybe that's a good starting point. Maybe you've got something to add. He's writing. You've got a microphone there.
Well, I give you one example from my own experience. I had at one point to go through a course in elementary mathematics very quickly because I was going to have to be involved in summer school. And up to that time, I really hadn't used a mixture of print and audio. But I found as I was going through, first that I was reading, doing calculations, or just running as fast as I could. And the sense of relief when I could stop reading and have someone talk to me was absolutely crucial. And I realized then that a mixture of audio and print, they're very simple technologies. I mean, there's nothing as complex as we're looking at today. This was simply audio cassette and plain print. But it was giving me another view on the way in which one could carry forward the argumentation that mathematics is so full of. And then I found, when I started to make an audio of myself, of a piece of print that was one ferocious mathematical calculation going from the top of the page to the bottom of the page. And it all looked very neat, very clear to me, but I knew perfectly well that only 10% of the students would actually get from the top to the bottom. And I remembered my experience with audio, and so I started to make an audio tape, which was really a mixture of informal commentary, trying to get a student to be able to see that it isn't all that complex. But you can do all kinds of things. You can say, look at that little term there. It looks like it's awkward in line 3. Well, by the time we get to line 8, it's going to be gone. Why is it going to be gone? Well, have a look. It's small compared to the other things, so you can just chuck it away. You can wave your hands in audio in a way that you can never wave your hands in print. And so what I found was that a mixture, an experience as a student, gave me an insight about the combined effect of audio and print. And of course, then I thought of the fact, now I go to a lot of art galleries, and getting the audio guide and watching the text, the painting, while someone's giving you all the background and so on, is so much more an effective experience. And so from having a couple of experiences of that kind, I became much more susceptible to using those combined tools. You can also hand that to somebody else and say, have a look at that, have a look at that mix. And if they get the same buzz out of it that I certainly did, then you can work your way through a wider group of people and start really taking on new technologies because you can see what they give you in pedagogic terms.
I have a question based on your experience on e-learning, because I'm building an e-learning course right now, and one of the major concerns that I have is that what guarantees do we have that the person that's taking the e-learning course is actually the person that's registered for the course? So based on your expertise, what can we do to guarantee that?
One for you, you handle that a lot.
Well, it doesn't take ICT technology to run up against that problem, even if you have a purely print course, right? The question is, who's doing the assignments? Is it the person registered for the course, or is it not? And there are some tricks that you can do with digitized text. There are programs that will tell you whether there has been a change of style in the way in which things are articulated, so that you can get a feeling of when the text is not just one person writing, but actually more than one person writing. But other than that, I think it is a difficult proposition to be able to, in distance learning courses, to make sure that the right person is writing the exam.
I think what I was saying about knowing the context of your learners and understanding who the learners are, you need to have a smaller class to do that. But if you have a small group, it's possible to know each person. And through the course, through constant engagement, especially if you're getting them to give you feedback all the way through, so not just one big quiz or one big assignment, but if there's lots of little things, then as a teacher, you will know that person. You'll know what they're capable of. And teachers are very good at, even with a class of 30 in a school, of knowing what each student can do. They can predict pretty much what the next assignment's going to look like. So once you have that level of understanding of your students, it's easy to detect a change or somebody faking it or something. But with a larger class, it's much harder. Yeah.
Yeah, but I had another thought is that even though we know the students and we know what they're capable of, how can we prove that that's not their work so that we can fail them? Because they can give us someone else's work, but because we cannot prove that it's someone else's work, we have to give them the grade.
Well, I don't think anyone has solved that, really. Even on a normal university course on campus, you don't know that the person walking into an exam and sitting in the room is necessarily that student, necessarily. In the end, I mean, they're only cheating themselves, so they won't know the subject. So. Yeah.
I would like to go back to Christopher's question about the three things with no fear and passion. Okay, so number one is Cyprus is small, so let's make a hub and use the expertise that exists in this country, in this island, in education, in courses that are all scattered around. The second thing is Cyprus is international, both throughout history and now. So use it to make ties internationally and bring things that are best around. I think that e-learning allows us to do this in ways that we've not been able to do. The third thing is a little bit more difficult to pinpoint, but I'll say it. Cyprus is a strange combination of conservatism and progressiveness. And we can use it to rely on some very good things we have in our education here and dare to be innovative. And again, these tools allow us to do these things with much less cost than we would otherwise. So this is my answer to what you asked.
Yeah, I have a question for Mr. Duyamas. Why you're not supporting the SCORM 2004 standard for the packages, and if it's an easy way to overcome this obstacle? Let's say a school has lots of SCORM packages, they don't have access to an LMS at this point, and they want to set up really quickly and easily an LMS. And maybe they might want to choose Moodle. So how do they overcome this obstacle?
It's not, well, there's a couple of answers. Firstly, most SCORM 2004 packages will work in Moodle. That standard is very complicated, and it's very, very difficult to support it 100%. And although I could put a lot of resources in and make it happen, it's expensive. It's a lot of money for me to develop that. At the moment, I estimate we support 80%, 90% of SCORM 2004 packages. And we are certified in all the older version of SCORM 1.2. That is 100%. So all those older ones work, most of the newer ones work. And I think that's mostly enough. You'll probably find it'll just work, usually. The problem is that standard is so complex, and if I put all this money into fixing it, it mostly will be a waste, because if you look at the SCORM team who developed the SCORM standard, even they say that SCORM 2004 is too complex. So they're now working on SCORM version 2, which is a simpler version again. They're going to throw all that away, and now they're going to make a new standard, SCORM 2, which is simpler again. So in the end, it was kind of it wasn't worth it for us to finish that off. But it probably works anyway, so it's just very hard to get certified. And the other answer is that it does, remember my list of 10 things in the progression? SCORM's there on number 1. It doesn't promote the kind of interactivity, collaboration that I like to promote. So that reduces its priority for me personally a little bit. So,
All right, any more questions?
My question is, it has to do with compatibility again, maybe simpler question. If we use previous editions of Moodle and then we go to the next one, it's going to be 100% compatible. How do we transfer what we did to the new Moodle, etc.?
Yeah, we've always had very good upgrade support. So Moodle is always compatible when you upgrade from a previous version. Up to Moodle 1.9, you could upgrade from any previous version straight to 1.9 or whatever the latest was. In Moodle 2, we've stopped that. Now you must be at Moodle 1.9 already and then go to 2. We don't support 1.8 to 2 or any. So that enabled us to throw away a lot of old code and clean up the system. So it's not, if you have 1.8, you would go to 1.9 and then 2, and everything would come. It would be okay. But test it first. Yeah.
Any more questions? Please. Mariana, behind you.
I was impressed by the presentations that they were mostly focused on the educational part of use of e-learning tools and not on the technology, and that was nice. In what way? That there are a lot of concerns of how this will be implemented in a way that it will be running on its own. It won't be an act of a teacher only, but an act of a lot of collaborators in the whole process, and that's education. You need a lot of people to take part of this. You need the students, you need the teachers, you need everybody around. And the fact that most of the concerns heard, or maybe the solutions found, or the proposals, are a lot of what we are concerned in the DS project as well. And what I was feeling is that you have a lighter burden in a way, because you have the open source is mostly used by universities, high school students, and the concern we have on our side is that this has to work in primary school education as well, and in all levels, and under a very conservative structure in a way of working. But a lot of answers have been given by the presentations, and it was quite interesting. So it's not a question, but just a note to understand the basis.
There are we have a lot of primary schools that use Moodle, and what they tend to do is just turn things off. They turn features off. They just bring it right down to a simple set of features, and that works too. That's the good thing about a modular system. And they make the font sizes bigger and things like that. Did Paul want to say something?
I just wanted to make a remark that what I understand as part of what your comment was that at the moment Moodle is working for people within the education field by and large, even coming from primary school up to university. A couple of years ago, I attended a conference in which an official of the Goethe Institute. The Goethe Institute is the German cultural organization that promotes Germanness around the world. And they took on Moodle, and they had 500,000 users. And they said that it was extremely easy to do, and they found very few parts of it where they had to actually go for more expert advice. So that just occurred to me as one example of a very large-scale implementation of Moodle where you weren't looking within the education field at all.
Hello, thank you all. It was a fantastic day for me. But I've got a question for the teachers who are afraid of computers and technology and Moodle. And I see colleagues who are just trying to stay away from Moodle. And I know the reason, and you know the reason. Are you thinking of any solutions for such teachers? Because without my colleagues around me, it's never be possible for me to use 100% Moodle. So if you could make any comments about this, thank you.
That's very much a focus of the hub stuff, the community hubs, because a new teacher faced with a blank course will be able to find this community button and get a course off the shelf from someone else that is partially what they need, and hopefully very close to completely what they need. But that'll get them started, and they can start seeing the possibilities. Now, there are lots of people who will find that too difficult as well, I know. It's not always possible to solve software problems in software. But if you have any good ideas, I'd like to hear them. That's a good thing to be talking about in the community, I think. Yeah.
Any more questions? Professor Aziz.
actually a similar question to that which was posed before. In the natural and exact sciences, it's much more easy for professors and teachers to create their own digital material or in general material for high technology presentations. But with respect to the humanities, because most of the arguments in the humanities are subjective and cannot be proven in an objective way as it is taking place in the scientific world, in the sciences, it's much more difficult for them to expose themselves and write down a full course which is there open for somebody to evaluate and evaluate in a sense not the computer knowledge of the teacher but the content itself. And this prevents, I think, many capable teachers to really go into the digital world.
I actually, in my experience, I've actually seen most of the really good courses are actually humanities courses because they don't have to develop as much content. They just say, here's something to read this book or read this, and then that's a discussion. And they're used to writing. They're already very good at writing and reading, so you have a much more dynamic. They get into that side of things easier, actually. So, yeah, it's different.
Could I make the comment that I think from my exposure both to the exact sciences and teaching the exact sciences and my own interest in the humanities, that it is from the student's point of view, particularly if you think of the discussion forums that would be a major part of a course online, that an undergraduate student can make a comment or expose a point of view which is new, which is something that hasn't been said before, or a reinterpretation of something that's been said before. It is very rare in undergraduate physics for a student to be able to produce something that is recognized as new by the academic community. So the function of discussion in humanities and social science and some of the professional areas, I think is quite powerful and can come in at a much earlier stage in education than would be the case in physics or mathematics.
Yes, please, Dr. Petridis.
First of all, let me thank you again for your talk. My question is this. Moodle is now happily used by both conventional universities catering to age groups of people between 18 and 22 mostly, as well as by open universities catering to adult learners of older ages. Does Moodle organization have any metrics showing perhaps whether there is any difference in attitudes towards Moodle or in practices using these platforms, or any data of this sort and this orientation? Thank you.
So, do you mean if there's differences between the adult learners and the school learners? Not metrics, no. There's so much data in this project that there's PhDs galore. There'll be so much research potential. We have a lot of data, and I always hope people will come along. And we have had a lot of PhDs and master's students use some of that data. But no, I don't have any really good data. I've seen some good school sites. It's the little things, like in Moodle you can switch the language of the interface quite easily. And in one course you can say, I want the interface of this course to be in French or German, even if the rest of the site is in English. So if you're teaching French, you just make the course all in French straight away, right? And so you're straight away in a French environment, and that sort of stuff gets used at schools more. High school teachers are quite good at experimenting with these little things that I've seen, but I don't have any real good data, no. Good opportunity.
Any last question? Last question.
Hi. First of all, I'd like to congratulate the Open University for its initiative and the ministry, because it's probably about time that open source software comes into the Cyprus market as well. My question more to Martin is, I've seen that you're also trying to integrate some collaboration tools in Moodle. Do you think that at some point you're going to try and, let's say, hit this kind of market in the sense that you would allow much more collaboration between colleagues rather than, let's say, collaboration between just students and the teacher in either way?
Yeah, again, that's the community hubs are exactly that. The hubs will have courses for teachers of different types. So people who are teaching any particular subject, there will be a course for them. When I say course, it doesn't necessarily be one that you sign up for and pay for or anything. It's just a community, an area. That's exactly what that's for.
Yeah, my question arose more from the list of companies that you showed who are using Moodle. And do you have any indication of how these people are taking advantage of the way that they're taking advantage of Moodle? Is it just for internal training, or are they using it for any other purposes, for example?
The companies are mostly using it for internal training. For example, Google use it as a legal requirement. All their new employees need to learn all the processes inside Google, who to see for what, the staff regulations, tax implications, all that stuff. So they need to go through a course and that says they now know that when they're a new employee. There's a big shipping company, GAC. They have something like 10,000 employees, and they have a lot of internal training for all kinds of facets of safety, handling materials, different international laws, all that sort of stuff. So it's all mostly internal training, for example.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Before we close, please allow me to put forward a suggestion. Actually, I got the idea from Martin's talk. Earlier, Martin, you said that young students find it very fun to use that tool for catapulting their teachers. I would suggest to develop a real tool for adult, older students, and I'm sure we would make a lot of money out of that. Thank you again.
Κλείνοντας, ευχαριστούμε θερμά τους ομιλητές που μας τίμησαν με την παρουσία και τον εκλεκτό λόγο τους. Ευχαριστούμε επίσης όλους εσάς που η ενεργός συμμετοχή σας νοηματοδότησε τις προσπάθειές μας. Πριν αποχωρήσουμε από την αίθουσα, θα παρακαλούσα τον πρόεδρο της δικού σας Επιτροπής του Ανοιχτού Πανεπιστημίου Κύπρου, καθηγητή Πάνο Ραζή, όπως επιδώσει αναμνηστικό δώρο στον κύριο ομιλητή της ημερίδας, κύριο Μάρτιν Ντουγιάμας.